We got him, boys. It's all over. We've proven everything. James Comey has been subpoenaed in the grand conspiracy against Trump. So far, 130 subpoenas have been issued, and that proves it. It doesn't. It's a subpoena, meaning they're going to investigate. Maybe there will be an actual indictment for once, but I don't want to be blackpilled. I just don't know that we're actually going to get any real criminal charges. I mean, the best it seems the Trump administration has been able to do is accuse certain Democrats of, like, mortgage fraud for having houses in the wrong location, which they shouldn't do, but it's certainly not evidence of a grand conspiracy against Trump. So I'm interested to see where this goes. It is big news, so we'll talk about that. Plus, the Pentagon is requesting $200 billion from Congress to keep funding this war, which is absolutely crazy. And, well, I guess, what are you guys doing?
I'm not doing anything.
Partying.
I'm messing with the computer over here. Anyway, so back to the news.
I'm just jamming on the guitar. What about you, man?
Ian's just jamming on the guitar. The intro is all ruined. The metaverse ended, and it's really funny because there's some guy who's like, I spent millions of dollars in the metaverse. That's falling apart. And then we have an AI movie. Because you know we love talking about AI movies, and you're going to want to hear this. It's a movie about, I'm going to say it.
Do it.
Impossibly Fat Milkers.
Impossibly Fat Milkers.
Really?
That is what the AI movie is about.
Wow.
And it's hilarious, but it's actually a good jumping off point to talk about how far AI has come. Because it's actually, aside from the goofy nature of the video, it's remarkably well generated. It's pretty crazy. So we will get into all of that, my friends. But before we do, head over to Tax Network USA, my friends. We got a great sponsor. It is tnusa.com/Tim. Do you guys owe back taxes or have unfiled returns? Have you filed every year, but you still keep owing? Did you retire and suddenly get hit with a tax bill you didn't expect? Your balance is not going to go down. Penalties are going to grow. Interest will compound. And many of you are about to owe again for this upcoming tax year with no plan in place. Stop what you're doing and call Tax Network USA. The IRS is not waiting. The IRS is enforcing collections through wage garnishments, bank levies, and property seizures. They can even file for you without your consent. This is where Tax Network USA comes in. With over 15 years in the business, there hasn't been a tax case they haven't seen or resolved. They specialize in tax controversies and help taxpayers nationwide get back on track by resolving back taxes and unfiled returns once and for all. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, their team has resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. And they can do the same for you, but you got to call now. They're offering a free investigation call with the IRS. After that, they put a clear case plan in place to resolve your tax problem and get you back on track. So call 1-866-686-1535. That is 1-866-686-1535, or visit tnusa.com/Tim. Check that one out. Don't forget, my friends, to also smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more, we have Rudyard Lynch.
Thank you so much for having me.
Grab your microphone, brother. We can't hear you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a...
Who are you? What do you do?
I run the YouTube channel What If Alt Hist and History 102.
And you discuss history.
I talk about history, anthropology, politics, and the intersection of all of those things.
Right on. Should be interesting. Kyla is back.
Hi.
And
you can find me not so erudite everywhere.
And you're a, what do you do?
I do political commentary, mostly debate.
She's here to yell at us because she's a lib.
Yes.
That's what she's doing. Of course, Phil and Ian are here, but we don't need introductions for the people you know and love. Let's jump to the news from Axios.com. We got James Comey subpoenaed in alleged grand conspiracy against Trump. Former FBI Director James Comey has been subpoenaed in the wide-ranging grand conspiracy case against the ex-officials who investigated and prosecuted President Trump. Two sources with knowledge of the situation tell Axios. The investigation has produced more than 130 subpoenas since cranking up last year. The officials, including Comey, have all decried the investigation as political persecution and lawfare. The Trump administration's grand conspiracy theory posits that Democratic officials bent the rules, broke the law, and lied under oath to investigate, prosecute, and otherwise undermine Trump from his election in 2016 through his federal indictments in 2023. The Comey subpoena issued last week relates to his alleged role in the drafting of a January 2017 intelligence community assessment concerning Russia's election interference that favored Trump. The assessment referenced the now widely discredited Steele dossier, whose inclusion ran counter to fundamental tradecraft principles and ultimately undermined the credibility of a key judgment, according to a tradecraft review completed in June under Trump's current CIA director, John Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe then referred Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan for prosecution. Well, all I can say, folks, is this proves it once and for all. It is now beyond a reasonable doubt, and we will just assert it as fact.
Great.
It would be nice. It would be great if we could do something like that. But
We can.
I don't.
It doesn't mean it's correct.
Well,
Yeah,
we
I was gonna
definitely
say,
shouldn't,
I
because
don't
rule
think
of
that
law
it's gonna
matters.
actually-
Until proven guilty. Comey, you're innocent. Until we
I
find
mean-
out.
Well, if this was a standard of due process, then like every single lawyer that we were talking about yesterday is like beyond guilty compared to Comey, right?
Agreed. They're all guilty. Lock them all up.
Like, lock them all up, right? But like obviously, like due process matters, and it's good that we have due process because it protects. As a liberal, I want due process so that when my side, but I don't really have a team, but when we want due process because we want to ensure that people who have vested interests against us can't weaponize systems, and I think that there's genuine concern that the DOJ is being weaponized against Trump enemies.
Yeah,
I think it was weaponized against Trump.
I think it's been.
Sure, and both of those instances, if that was the case, if these are the
That's
case,
why I
both of
just
these
don't.
things are bad,
I
right?
don't believe in due process anymore. Like it's like the tooth fairy to me now. Like you can say it exists and we understand the concept. Like yes, when I go to bed after my teeth fall out, hopefully not at 40 years old, that would suck. But I put it under my pillow and then money's there. Like something did happen, and then I'm told it was the tooth fairy. That's how I feel about due process, right? Something does happen most of the time, but when it actually matters, there's no due process because the left makes the same exact argument I'm making now. You've got that dude in California who raped that one chick, and they said he had was it that's what it is? Affluenza from raping that chick.
Yeah.
So he didn't. There was
know
no
anything about
functional
this.
due
He
process
was too
there.
rich to know what he was doing
Yeah.
wrong.
The
He didn't
affluenza
realize
case.
it.
spoiled
I'm
into
not
being.
familiar with
It's
that.
crazy. They
So
saw
he like-
affluenza.
Yeah, they said he suffered from affluenza because he was too rich to understand what he did was wrong. So that's from the left. The left has made that argument. I think it's fair to say both the left and the right agree that the legal system is just a function of who wants to exercise power against their enemies.
I think that these
Is
going
this
behind the
Ethan
backs.
Couch case?
Yes.
that
Going
what it was?
behind of the backs of people and like spying on opponents has been the norm through history, even though they will tell you we have due process. And I want to, Rudyard, I really want to get your take on this because since the internet feels like people like Donald Trump actually have a chance at bucking the system. Did this kind of thing ever happen in the past?
So I have a few different takes here. The first of which is we have to be very careful about eroding rule of law because that's been the English-speaking world's great advantage. And if we erode rule of law, it's going to have very negative downstream effects on everything between the economy, between politics, because rule of law is the set of rules you use to establish all social interaction. And if that goes away, you won't make companies because someone will steal the company you make.
But-
I have another thing. The second thing is the left has been weaponizing this already, and there's been a huge issue with conservative judges and with conservatives making the argument that you're opposed to, saying, oh, we can't do this, blank, blank, blank. The left has already done a weaponization of the political process to an insane degree, and when conservatives push against stuff where it should be illegal to discriminate against white men under civil rights law, it happens on a mass degree, but conservative judges don't stand against it. Conservative judges don't stand against the rampant abuse in the family court system against men. They don't stand against the rampant biases against white men, where the left has been doing this to an insane degree, and even defensively, the right does not protect itself.
Well, so to your point about how we want to keep the rule of law, I would agree, but when it's gone, it's gone. Right?
mean,
I want to keep my car nice and clean, but if a bunch of vandals come and smash it with crowbars, there's nothing I can do about it.
So
I get it fixed.
To point on the couch thing you guys were talking about, he wasn't under affluenza. He was under the influence of intoxication, Ethan Couch.
They made the argument.
The argument was that he shouldn't get the harshest penalty because he had quote unquote affluenza. It's a nonsense term that meant he was so rich he didn't understand right from wrong.
Yeah.
So he did actually end up getting charged. He
did.
Yeah, he had
and
10
the argument
years
was that he
probation.
shouldn't get the harshest of penalties for what he did.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like there was a passed out woman and he was raping her and then some guys caught her or something?
Yeah.
This was like a Me Too
But this
era
isn't
thing.
the left, right? This is his defense
No,
attorney argued this.
The left was upset that he did not go to prison in the most harshest of penalties because the court system failed us.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. First
Are
of all,
you
he's from
conservative?
Texas. Well, he's from Texas, not California. So the left narrative isn't working here. But also in this case, he was intoxicated and under the influence of drugs, and
Nobody
he hit
disagrees.
people. Yeah, which is all bad, right?
Agreed.
But I think it's
Progressives were upset at the time of this case because
Okay.
they wanted a very harsh penalty against him. The judge
Sure.
gave him a light sentence, citing what she called affluenza.
I see his defense attorney citing affluenza. I can't find the judge citing
Well,
that as the
I
reason why
mean,
she gave him. But 10 years probation
neither here nor there. I mean, it's an old story we were lightly referencing where people on the
Sure, I just
progressives were
wanna-
upset about it.
Sure, I
but
just wanna be
to the
clear.
point, back to Rudyard, like I was saying, like I have a nice car, I try to protect it, right? I'll park it in my garage. Then one day while I'm sleeping, a bunch of whoever Antifa comes and firebombs the garage. It's gone. So you talk about the rule of law and we want to maintain it, but at the same time you say that the left has been destroying it and eroding it. I mean, at a certain point, they've destroyed it.
Yeah, that's it's you oftentimes have to balance two opposing things and figure out where between these two is the reasonable conclusion. And I understand what you're saying, where I mean, Russiagate was a lie, and it's crazy there's been no prosecution for this staggering lie because there was no actual evidence that Trump was colluding with Russia or that the Russians tilted the course of the election. This was just a story the left
Right.
made up. And slander is incorrect, especially slander on that scale. And you can't let that go back. And I think another thing is we have laws against treason, and we have seen mass treason among the population. And I would need to actually, I'm not a lawyer.
Well, do you mean like codified legal treason? Which I would say this. The actual law is when you're providing material resources to an enemy at a time of war, or aid and comfort, or whatever. It's specific. Sedition is general undermining of the government in the United States.
Yes.
And there is treason. Because this happened when Trump said this is like sedition punishable by death. That is when the military seeks to undermine. So there is a special sedition there. I would argue that many of the people you may be referring to, you could perhaps argue treason because they are adherent to, say, China or whatever. But we aren't at war with China despite being adversaries. Iran now is where it gets interesting because you've got a lot of people that are accusing Tucker Carlson of treason directly for communicating with Iran before the U.S., as the U.S. was preparing strikes against them. But as I would say for the general leftist, it's seditious conspiracy.
You're correct. I got the words wrong. I mean, what I'd say in general is there's been a complete and utter abuse of the rule of law so far. And it's been done predominantly by the left across a variety of different fields, with everything stretching from the national level to the social level to the family level. And this has been justified by the court system. And so you have to be careful that if you remove the institution of law, we're going to devolve into being a third world dictatorship.
I think we are, right? So Trump won the popular vote. He got a plurality with, I think it was like 49.8%. The American people expect something to be done. But he's being obstructed by judges every step of the way. And then there's this tit for tat back and forth where it goes to like 3 appeals and then finally he wins. There was a recent ruling with RFK Jr. where he wanted to change the rules on vaccine safety, and then once again a judge blocked him. And you famously have this judge in D.C. that just says literally no to everything. There was that particularly important court case where these judges were arguing that any district, actually it was the left was arguing that any district court judge can overturn anything Trump does. And then the Trump administration argued this is insane because at the time, they had an appeal granted allowing this immigration practice. I forgot the specific executive order. As soon as it was granted, progressive groups filed a lawsuit in another federal jurisdiction, which put a stay on it, so they can't both be true at the same time. I think it's fair to say that while I agree with you, the left is absolutely just saying by any means necessary, and the right is saying slow down their Democrats.
The left is breaking rule of law. What they're doing is not... It's not justifiable and it's not fair. And the English common law was established in the 12th century under a certain context with a certain aim in charge. And this was not the end point of the context or the aim that we were trying to reach. And you have to parallel the left for where they're at. And it's quite, I'm trying to articulate something complicated where in crisis periods like this, you set precedents that you can't go back. And so if you compare the English Civil War to the French Revolution, in the English Civil War, you had a political crisis, and at the end of it, England became a democracy with rule of law, and in France, it spiraled into being a military dictatorship.
Yeah.
And these are very different outcomes. And you have to be careful about not establishing precedents that future generations can look to. Because if you go to Latin America, there's a lot of countries in Latin America, like Argentina, Argentina's more white than America. It has a temperate climate. And Argentina's poor because they don't have rule of law. Where if you can't establish a company and assume that a social superior is not going to steal your company, you can't have a capitalist economy.
So let me ask you this question. What is wrong with a military dictatorship?
So there's multiple tiers. 95+% of regimes in history are authoritarian. And authoritarian is one strong man on top who runs everything. There's tiers, though, where some of them are enlightened. And when you look at authors like Aristotle, they were talking about the benefits of monarchy. And I'm not a monarchist. But monarchy is you have a long-term incentive for the leader to care about the population. And that works a lot better than something like the Soviet Union.
Well, I wanted to ask you specifically about what you mentioned what's going on today. You compared that to, say, the British or the French. So my question is more so, what would be bad about the United States becoming a military dictatorship?
The military would be, you could have a situation where the military is corrupt, it shuts down capitalism, it shuts down freedom, it shuts down the functioning of a society, and the good things we take for granted die, and those things are fundamentally dependent on freedom.
What if a military dictatorship emerged in the United States that was based entirely upon traditional American conservatism, and the military by force said, we're not going to allow leftism anymore, we're not going to allow the courts to supersede the will of the people, and they just, through military rigidity, enforced the right cultural worldview?
That's why I said there's a huge Overton window for authoritarianism, because you're trusting the leader a lot. If you looked at Emperor Augustus, who was the first Roman dictator, he was one of the greatest statesmen in history. So when Rome did the transition from democracy to monarchy, they had one of the best rulers ever. And things governed very well until Tiberius and Caligula showed up, and then it got a lot worse. And with monarchies or authoritarianism, you're trusting and the reason that a lot of the older authors preferred monarchies to military dictatorships is that the monarch has an incentive to pass things on to their children. So the monarch has a multi-generational incentive, so they're less likely to hurt things like freedom or the free market. Because I put rule of law above democracy. Because if you're a society with rule of law, it means you have functional freedom. It means you have you can have capitalism. Because keep in mind.
So, but let me ask you: how would you feel if there was a military dictatorship that enforced the things you wanted to exist?
Everyone wants the things they forced. Everyone wants the things that they believe to be enforced.
So, would you be happy if Donald Trump became a supreme dictator and used the military to enforce laws, but it was everything you wanted in society?
I would not be happy with that. What I will say is that the reason you could not have Timcast in any other Western country, because they've had left-wing authoritarianism remove the rule of law and personal freedoms, where once you start pulling that away, you very quickly end up in a society where you lose a lot. And it's one of those things where I put property rights and rule of law above everything else in my framework.
But so I guess my ultimate point is, when you look at the history of the United States, there are varying degrees of cultural enforcement across the board. Obviously not military dictatorship, but until you get to Abraham Lincoln, I suppose, when things got pretty serious with the Civil War. But blasphemy, for instance, was illegal up until like the early 1800s. My view largely is that if everybody in this country was morally homogenous, they'd be completely happy. Like let's say everybody in this country, 100% of people, were Christian theocrats. They'd have no problem with a member of Congress proposing a bill of a commandment law.
But Christian theocracies fell at the hands oftentimes of Christianity, because the idea that people will stay like wholly, like unified in the perfect way insofar as that people will be happy just doesn't happen, right?
Agreed.
Because people
like the United States today used to be morally homogenous to a great degree, and then it started fracturing. I would argue that since the Civil War, like the bifurcation actually started around the time the country was formed, because Thomas Jefferson wanted to actually complain about slavery in the Declaration of Independence, but they were concerned that South Carolina and Georgia would not join the effort if they included that grievance.
The king, yeah.
And so there was a general bit of, let's call it acrimony, but it started to bubble up in the 1820s when there was a perception in the 1820s that a civil war could actually happen in the United States, though it didn't. And then it did happen, in 1861. Since then, you've had this clash between two polarized worldviews in this country. My point ultimately is, if you have a group of people that believe the exact same thing, the things they argue about are the minutia. You know, in the 90s,
People kill over the minutia, though, right?
Sure, and it can spin wild out of control. But in the 90s, Democrats and Republicans lived together, got married, and their arguments were over like how much in taxes versus like how long a woman should be allowed to have an abortion. And it was like the Republicans were like, I think 16 weeks is too long, and Democrats are like, it's got to be 18 weeks.
That was just the political.
Now,
that was the political Overton window, though. There were still these ideas.
I guess what I'm saying is that when you look at the moral worldview of Democrats and Republicans, the majority of the country in like 1994, they overwhelmingly overlapped, and so they were pretty okay with like, I mean, like, certainly we had protests for the Iraq and Afghanistan war. But still, people generally were like, well, 9/11, right? They rallied around George W. Bush even after 2000. Ultimately, my point is this, just to simplify. No one would care about a military dictatorship that was enforcing exactly what their worldview was. Only the dissenters would. So
I would
if you
say
had
fools only don't care about that. I would say
Everyone is a fool.
Well, I don't think everyone's a fool. I think like the one of the things that I love about like America and like American tradition, like Greek philosophy, is that like we're built on a tradition of people thinking beyond just their own skin and preferences. This is why you're probably familiar with Rawls and like the veil of ignorance, right? It's this great kind of political philosophy where it says you should imagine a world where you can't know what body, gender, etc. you'll be born into. What society do you want?
This literally sounds like an argument against universal enfranchisement, because the average person doesn't conceive of the world like that. And as much as you're like, this is what it ought to be, and I agree, this is not the reality of the world that we live in.
So I agree that it's not the reality of the world we live in to some degree, but I think that like
to a large degree.
Well, sure, and I think that that's a sad thing. I think the fact that we've like lost the connection to the things that matter beyond just our own skin, that we've failed to understand that principles matter fundamentally and deeply, and to hold to these principles, to understand why we said everyone has to be equal before the law, even if I hate that guy, and why that matters is a failing of our society, and it doesn't matter what side.
But don't we have to deal with the world as it is? We have to meet the population and meet the world where it is. We can't be like, well, it should be this and it should be that.
There's this saying in psychology where we say if your expectations for people are exactly where they are, all they'll do is be exactly what they are. Whereas if you look at people and you say, I know you can do better, I know that we can collect and do and unify, they might not get up here, but they're probably going to get here.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, right? Like, murder is wrong, obviously. We all agree.
Generally, except for like self-defense, blah, blah, blah.
Well, so that's not murder. Self-defense isn't murder. Murder is the intentional killing of another person without warrant.
Okay.
And so, if you walked up to a person and just shot them and they died, we'd find that to be murder. And Rudyard, this is for you too. Let's say that you live in a small village in the countryside, and the year is 1300 whatever, and you're French, so you're all like white, brown hair, blue-eyed people or whatever, whatever they looked like in France, and they're sitting there going ha 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 and inventing croissants, and then you get people who are clearly distinct from you, and they show up, and you say, well, we don't just kill people, we're a little apprehensive. And then you meet and you talk, and the guy pulls a knife and just stabs your village elder to death, and then throws fire in your village and then flees.
Sounds like the Romans.
So then, the next day, a similar person shows up. Do you just say, no, we must stand by our principles. We do not attack. We do not, Or when a similar person shows up in the same garb, with the same physical appearance, carrying a torch, do you say one more move and you die?
I would say that both of these philosophies were silly to begin with. I don't think that the philosophy of like generosity means naivete.
I didn't ask you. I asked you a specific scenario to tell me what you thought.
I'm telling you why the scenario already is flawed. I think that the principle that they had initially probably was uninformed and uncomplex, and it does have to be
don't
updated.
breed outsiders,
but it doesn't have to be
stand
updated
guard.
to an extreme opposite side, which is often what people do. They go from one side and then they swap to the other side. And the reality is that the truth is a lot more times in the middle of what is a proper dialectic of wisdom.
So let's just back to the question. Your proposition then is the village should not allow anyone to peacefully greet them out of fear that there could be an act of violence against them.
No, of course not. How would you take that away from what I just said?
You said that you said the initial response they had was probably flawed.
Right, but I said don't just do the opposite also, which is
because it might be a defector that's
if a guy throws a torch at your village and burns down your house and kills one of your people and then flees, and then a person who looks just like him, wearing the same clothes, the same flag, whatever, shows up the next day, do you treat him the same, or do you adapt your?
You should adapt, but my caution to people is that when they think adapt, they want to go to the opposite extreme end. When in reality, oftentimes wisdom falls between the middle of two dialectics.
Sure. So just what do you do?
I would probably be cautious, probably have arms and weapons ready in case he whips out his torch to start stabbing and murdering and burning things, right? But inquire him, ask why he's there, see what his intention is in the village, right? You could even treat him cautiously, say he gives you all of the perfect answers that makes you go like, oh, he's actually a defector from that village and he's got info.
Okay. What if he throws the torch at your village and burns another building down and runs?
Well, hopefully you've got guys ready and he's far enough away that when you greet him,
He does. And then the next day, a similar looking guy in the same clothes shows up with a torch. Do you shoot him with an arrow?
No.
You let him throw the torch again?
No, you do neither, right?
You do neither?
Well, yeah, like,
I guess
why
throw
are you being
torches.
black and white on this? Like, the reality is that, like, wisdom...
I'm just giving you a simple scenario, like,
sure,
what do you do?
Answering the
it's a
scenario
scenario that has happened over and over again in this country.
I agree, and I'm saying the scenario of human nature is to go to black and white thinking immediately. And what I'm saying to people is that black and white thinking is just as destructive. What if that next guy showing up with the torch is just about to show up and, like, bring blacksmith and, like, ironworks to your village and, like, revolutionize your technology?
I'm going to answer both of you. I said that I liked freedom and property rights, and I didn't say how that's enforced.
Yeah.
So, in many cases, monarchies or authoritarian regimes provide more freedom and property rights than democracies. And democracies supercharge the character of whatever people they're in. So of the top 1% of societies, they are predominantly among the top 1%. They're predominantly democracies. That includes Athens, Rome, America, the Netherlands, and democracies can also supercharge negative characteristics.
Yeah, they're not good because they're democracies. They're good because they were good. They were good societies.
Examples of democracies supercharging negative characteristics are the Latin sphere and the Middle East. France was better under a monarchy than it was under a democracy. So was Brazil. So was Greece. A bunch of lower trust societies. Same thing with in the Middle East, democracies have performed better. In the Middle East, democracies vote in the preferences of the majority group. So when America made Iraq a democracy, the majority Shia voted in to oppress the minority Sunni, and then they sided with America's rival Iran.
Yeah, but it's not just, sure, but the issue is, like, this is why when we look at democracies, there are different systems that work better, right? Like, there are certain, like, I'm sure you probably oppose, like, direct democracy, right? Like the Greeks did, because it doesn't work very well. It leads to a lot of tyranny, right? There's the tyranny of majority to be feared in democracy.
It's also slow.
I'm going to respond
it is
to
slower,
your point
but
as
democracies, the point of all these systems is to build counters to the major failings, right? In the case of a democracy, you have to be afraid of the majority, the tyranny of majority. And so you have to build into the system checks and balances to prevent against the tyranny of majority as much as possible.
You're appealing to wishy-washy concepts where
No, I'm not.
if there's an external threat, you have to assess it for what it is based on context. And you pick the highest quality person to do the assessing of context. And the thing with John Rawls is it's not an accurate depiction of the human condition to randomly pick what individual you would be, because that's not how this works. Individuals have their own genetics, and groups have different genetics, and people are rewarded for the choices they make. And so
That's not a refutation of Rawls.
I'm
Rawls
not
hypothetical
done.
can
I'm not
engage
done.
without the.
So you're
sure, but you're saying that Rawls doesn't
I'm
work
not
because there's
done.
no baked in genetics. But that's not the point of the
You need to
hypothetical
let
in
me
the
finish
first
the
place.
argument. So Rawls operates under an underlying Christian assumption that there's indeterminate souls that you shove into a population. That's not what happens. A population is made up of individuals with different traits that make choices. And so you can't say, if I were to randomly pick a certain population, what would I be? Because there's nothing random. An individual
Rawls
is
is
the
doing.
aggregation of all of the choices that went through them. And so you can't say, if I were to be born in a blank society, because the society is informed by the contextual decisions of everyone involved up to that point. It strips context from the entire human condition.
So
So
this
instead of-
is
instead
like
of-
saying trolley problems strip context because they like
But
engage in
let's
hypotheticals.
say
That's
instead
not
of
true.
saying Rawls, just make the argument of just articulate the argument.
Sure, yeah. The veil of ignorance is this thought experiment in the way that trolley problems are thought experiments, which is designed to help you decide which principles you want in your society. So if you imagine a society where you can't know who you will be in that society, what are some of the principles you hope are there? Rule of law, right? And like fair treatment before justice would be one that we would all be for, because I don't ever want to be in the minority group that just gets treated poorly by the justice system because I happen to be in that minority group.
So how would you define society?
The way that the way that we usually do, a collection of people with like somewhat unified cultural values, probably bordered by a nation state that like unifies together.
That's a great definition. I would argue that by that definition, which I agree with, there are several distinct societies that exist within the United States, and each and every one of these societies is willing to use violence and lawfare against those who would threaten their moral worldview.
What does this have to do with the veil of ignorance?
So you're saying in a society, like, who would you want to be? What rules do you want? And I would say, yes, that works wonderfully in a collection of individuals with a shared moral worldview and probably a national border. But what happens when that society is up against another society overlapping on its territories with a completely different worldview?
Well, this is part of how you can engage in the veil of ignorance, is going, well, I don't know who I am in this society, but how do I want that society theoretically to engage in foreign policy? Well, one of them, I would say, is I want my government to protect me as a citizen of whatever this nation state is, because I don't want other nation states coming in, stomping me and killing me and
This
taking
is more
my
so
land.
like an example that I'll use that's probably the least egregious would be open air fish markets in New York City. I think they're absolutely disgusting, and they shouldn't be allowed.
Because they smell?
It's not just that; it's the rotting fish and flesh that
dump it
sloughs
out
off
on the street.
and it it's all over the
Spray
street.
with a hose.
And then it's just
On the
rotting for
sidewalk.
days. And when you go to the Lower East Side, it's just everywhere you go.
Go to Houston.
The people who live there, that's their society. They are largely Chinese and Southeast Asian. They don't care about open air fish markets. But the people of New York have started to move away because they don't like it, and this has created an entrenched enclave. Enclaves are bad, and I believe, having a group of people that form their own subdivision that have their own rules is going to create animosity and violence, because you will create two distinct moral worldviews at odds with each other. Now, the reason I cite this example is because it's one of the least egregious, meaning the people of New York don't really care all that much about the open air fish markets. They just move away.
Yeah.
They stopped living in the area, more Chinese people moved in, and now the area is dominated by Chinese. But you could take a look at this and bring it to its most egregious, and that is like Chicago crime and shooting violence.
Sure.
So you have areas where there may be a middle-class black family, and gangbangers will come into that territory, or just young black men who are violent for whatever reason they may be, and they will create crime. This will cause the higher income people to flee and then just dramatically impoverish the area and create more crime and violence throughout the area. So then the argument we would make is, what rules do we want? Well, our principles would suggest that you are innocent until proven guilty, and you should not be searched or have objects seized without something that warrants it.
Probable reason.
And probable cause. And so what happened in New York is they said, this neighborhood is where most of the shootings and violence happens, so this is where we're going to stop and frisk people. It also coincided with being a black neighborhood. The progressives then said, why are the majority of stop and frisks black? And the government, which these are Democrat-appointed police, said, that's just where the crime is. Then they said, no more stop and frisk, you need to stop because you're doing it to black people. So you have two distinct moral worldviews.
Sure.
You can't do this only to black people, and but it's just the neighborhood where the crime happens.
Yeah.
Your principles are meaningless in this regard because both groups are going to assert power over the other to make their world happen.
Well, this is where democracy can be beautiful or bad, right? And so what the thing you're posing, right? Say you say, I don't want to have enclaves in a society. And my counter to that would basically say, I think with the size of nation states, it's almost unavoidable. Even just think about the way that geography shapes a culture, right? If you've got a nation that's mountainous and full of pine trees, and it's also in a nation with beaches and fishing, and it's also in a nation with, insert different geographies, right? The people in the culture that are going to emerge from these, even just geographies alone, are probably going to have some of the different values. They're going to have things where they want to prioritize fishing industry more, but it's possible that the lumber industry is like having issues and they want more advocacy. And so they'll always have these competing interests. And I think the beauty of a democracy that's functioning well is that it takes two things where actually there might be reasonable concern, right?
Let me ask you a question.
Can I finish my thought and then I'll let you ask the question?
This is a long
Hey,
point.
you went for 5 minutes. I'll get
used to
2
it, buddy.
minutes, okay?
You've been doing this to me for
I'll just
5
finish my
years.
thought.
If you can
I promise
succinctly
I'll
make
wrap
the
it.
point.
Okay. The beauty of a dialectic of a democracy is you can take two opposing values, and what the idea is to find a compromise within both where ideally you find the best pieces of
here's
each
why
and
I'm
synthesize them.
interrupting.
Yeah.
I feel like that is rudimentary, and we understand that completely. It's not the point that I'm making. So I'll give you a better example. Dearborn, Michigan has several instances of female genital mutilation among young girls.
Yeah.
That is explicitly illegal in the United States. But in that community, it happens because there's no law enforcement that will stop it.
Right.
You are not going to get a white cop to go into a Muslim community and say, stop doing this, because they'll say it's our community. In fact, they even have their own de facto versions of police.
And they likely won't report it either. That's probably part of the issue
So
too.
what is the solution then? Should the overarching government dispatch some white people who are non-Muslims to take over their government, to force them at gunpoint to stop?
Yeah, I mean, this is the great federalist question: is to what extent should
Now that's a violation of the principles of the locals who voted that in.
True, but it might be for superseding like cultural values that we value more. This is the constant tension that happens with the federalism, like Amendment number 10. Go ahead, sorry.
So I'm going to say a few things. First of all is, thank you. You're not stating Rawls's full argument, where for the argument that Rawls gave, you could also apply that to Aristotle, because Aristotle was saying, what is the abstract concept of good that we can use? And Aristotle said there's 3 different political systems which are useful under different contexts that have their own issues. Rawls is also operating under the principle of equality, which is demonstratively false. Equality has been continually disproven by the science, as well as there are genetic differences between populations. That's disproven among all of the academic community. And so when you're looking at the Rawls, he's automatically jumping to socialism is good because equality is good, and this is all operating under the assumption that Enlightenment morality is correct.
Rawls is incredibly critical of socialism. He rejected egalitarianism.
So it depends on your definition of socialism, because the socialists play a game
Communism.
where there's multiple definitions of socialism used at any given time.
Sure.
So you can pick one or the other based on context.
Rawls was responding to the Marx
Rawls
idea
is a
of the
democratic
flattening
socialist,
yeah.
which is still a meaning of the word socialist.
Sure,
I
but
want to move on to
Okay,
the
sorry.
next big story, but I do want to just conclude by saying I completely agree with Kyla.
Thank
I
you.
think we should exert force over Muslims who refuse to adhere to our traditional
That is
values.
not my position
I have
at
another-
all, but I would love to flesh it out with you. But sort of my
do you
position.
mean?
It's like 50% of my position.
Well, I think that, again, we're going to go on to the next.
Oh, I want to
story.
clarify their argument before we move on. This is good.
The point is, when there are people who enter our society who have a religious practice that is an affront to our moral worldview, we will exert force against them to make them stop.
Yes, to an extent.
The thing
Well, of course, to an extent.
Yeah, that's why I said
Not
50%.
to an extent,
Yeah.
but not to an extent. Like, we will use force up to whatever means or whatever amount of force necessary to get them to stop. So it's not to an extent. It's literally.
when I
No.
say- no.
She's saying we'll tolerate some of their religious beliefs.
Like I want religious freedom
all right,
as
okay,
well,
okay,
right? And
right.
so this is like this is what I'm saying. There's this tension all the time between like individual rights of freedom of religion, but also state values of things like we don't mutilate
again,
children.
Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt, but we really do got to
Let me
jump.
ask this
wanna stress-
question.
I gotta
I think
stress
Tim
one
is
more
correct,
thing.
but continue.
I got to stress one more thing. This argument still only works so long as you maintain the monopoly on violence. And if
Like
you,
the state.
Yeah.
your
no, I'm just
moral
clarifying.
worldview, not the state. If you, as a society with a moral worldview, have the monopoly on violence, you can stop, say, female genital mutilation.
Sure.
But if there is a new cultural worldview that has emerged, a new moral worldview, let's call it leftist, that tolerates and supports what Muslims are doing, they will take from you your monopoly on violence, and then you get to civil war.
So a lot of leftists get into this weird tension with like Islam because they're very pro-freedom.
I don't want to have an argument about leftists
Sorry.
and Islam. My point was, if you have a monopoly on violence, you can assert your authority. If there are two distinct factions with equal use of force, you get civil war.
I agree with that. The issue is, I guess I'm just correcting the leftist idea that they just want FGM. They don't just want FGM. In fact, they acknowledge
that's the point.
This tension you're outlining exists regardless of the party side that you're pointing to.
My ultimate point, as we move on, again, sorry, is that your principles only apply to the people who agree with you. And that is universal to all moral groups. End of story.
Sure. Yeah, we live in a society. True.
Yes, like you might believe in the right to keep and bear arms, but you're not going to give an Islamic terrorist a gun and be like, you have a right to bear arms.
Sure, it's why I like the liberal principles where we said, well, we should have a couple of basic rules that we all apply to because other things we shouldn't impose on
So
other,
when
like
you
free
have
speech.
two distinct moral worldviews operating in one country, and I would say more than that, you are not going to abide them the same rights as you would someone of your society.
Sure, because I would say free speech is better than compelled or controlled speech, yeah.
Like I would say, if someone is an advocate for the destruction of my country, I will not defend their right to speak.
I
will not defend their right to keep and bear arms either. If a man comes to this country screaming Allahu Akbar and starts throwing bricks at cops, I'm not going to say he has a right to keep and bear arms. I'm going to say
but nobody
absolutely
thinks that
not.
he has a right for assault, right? That's already barred out. But
The
he might have a
point
right
I'm
to talk
making
about
is,
it.
if someone expresses clear ideological sympathies for ISIS, we will not give them a gun.
Possibly with ISIS, I think that's the case in America, but I think that there's like good statutory reason if you're a terrorist sympathizer or whatever. But like in general, like
Right, my point is,
but we don't want to say people who we just disagree with can't have rights.
domestic terrorism doesn't exist in the United States because of the First Amendment. So that's why Trump, his declaration was actually just a statement he made and not anything actually formal.
Yeah.
He would have to do an international declaration. This means, and I'll say it again, if someone is Antifa and says this country should burn, I will not defend their right to keep and bear arms. These are people who have expressed a violent intent, and we have seen in the past them use a violent intent. So, and that's a more egregious example. Let's jump to the next story, otherwise we'll keep talking.
Yeah.
This is from the Washington Post. The Pentagon seeks more than $200 billion in budget request for Iran war. Some White House officials do not think the Defense Department's request is a realistic shot of being approved in Congress, one senior administration official says. Additionally, we've got more updates as more Marines are being deployed to the Middle East. And of course, Donald Trump has said Israel was angry and bombed the South Pars gas field in Iran. Crude oil is now up to $119 per barrel, and gas is expected to go up. I've seen reports, correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't read too much into this, that China is now cutting off fertilizer exports.
China.
And guys, I know the Republicans are going to say, stick with the plan. But as of right now, I don't want to be pessimistic. Let's just say, holy crap, this is bad.
How about what plan?
I've heard Phil loves China, actually, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Phil's an avid communist communicator
He
about
loves
China.
China is an adversary. I will say that $200 billion, the request from the $200 billion, if I understand correctly, is to replace the stocks that they've already used. So it's not technically to continue funding the war. Not that it's not a slush fund anyways, essentially at the Pentagon, but it is to replace the stuff that they've already used because you don't want to have your stockpiles of weapons.
Agreed. But
to
the
be
point
used
is,
later.
$1 trillion
guys,
in a week and a half.
we spend several $100 billion on Israel for the past 50, 60 years. We spend $250 billion on Ukraine in the past 4 years, and now they want another $200 billion. I understand we spend like what's the budget per year, like $7 trillion?
I don't know. I have no idea.
It's some psychotic number like this. My point is, we are looking at. They're discussing removing sanctions on Iranian oil at sea because is it $7 trillion?
It's 8.38 billion. So this would up it to $1 trillion.
Trillion, you mean?
Billion.
But
Billion.
The budget.
838.7 billion. But
Yeah, the supplemental.
What, really?
yeah.
The supplemental
this is
budget
even worse than I
request.
thought.
So this ups it to $1 trillion if they get it.
And
Sorry,
it aims to cover sustained military operations, replenish depleted munitions, and accelerate weapons production amid intense strikes over the past 3 weeks. Look.
I get it. I don't like the Ayatollah. I don't like his son. I don't like their government. I don't like them constantly being a thorn in the side of all the countries in the region that are trying to just sell oil. I am not a Greta Thunberg. Bring the oil on, baby drill, baby drill. Let's have some capitalism. I'm not. Nobody. Greta Thunberg doesn't even care anymore. She's demanding oil get sent to Cuba.
That's
She didn't care about climate change.
She's just
My point is, the Iranian government sucks miserably. But as we already discussed, Eric Prince, he was quoted as saying, the problem with Iran, it's a roll of the dice. You don't know if you can succeed. This is not, I'll quote Charlie Kirk in June, I think it was June 17th. He said, this is a developed nation of 90 plus million people that you cannot just easily go in and topple. You cannot just ideologically change like some smaller countries. This is a serious war. Now, again, I think it's fair to point out, after Trump launched those strikes on the bunkers, a day after Charlie Kirk did say, I stand with my president and I want him to win. And I can respect that. I feel the same way. I want to win. I do think it's ill-advised, but I think we have to just be realistic. And I'm saying optimistic. But let's at least recognize a $200 billion budget request, oil at $120. This is not good news. This is not good news for anybody. I would implore the Republicans to pay attention to this, because if you ignore it or poo-poo it, you're going to lose the midterms worse than you may already be.
I'm in a real like crossroads in my own soul about this, because we're all in. We put our, as Alex Jones said, we put our dick in the light socket. So here we are electrocuting, and we're all the way in, baby. There's no going back. I don't know. I mean, obviously we could leave, but then they'll attack us for 20 years. It's like, what do we do? Destroy? Do we level this country to the ground, kill 100 million people, however many millions of people got to go, and
there's 90
set up a new
million,
government? Or do we yell to stop the war? Because I feel like I'm on board with this motion of American hegemony, free speech, property rights all over the planet. If we stop this thing, I think the whole system will crumble. So, but I don't want to kill a million Iranians. I do want the country to be called Persia, though, so it's less confusing about Iran.
Well, I mean, so it's been Iran for a long time. I know that it was Persia. It was Persia like
1903
back
or
in
something.
the Persian Empire and stuff. But it's actually been called Iran for a long time. The term Aryan comes from the word Iran, because they were like with the Caucasus. I guess the region is similar, but I don't have so much of a problem with the request for the money, because of the fact that it is to restock the depleted munitions, right? So you can have your problems with the war, you can have your concerns, you can address all of the real, actual, tangible problems that this is causing, but to say that the returning to whatever baseline level our munitions are or should be, I think that's something that we should do, because the idea of allowing the United States to not have the overwhelming military power that we do have, allowing that to be degraded, is far more of a problem for the U.S. than to say, oh, we're not going to spend $200 billion.
How do you guys feel about Trump in general, like promising peace, promising no wars, promising to end wars, and dragging you guys into Iran? Like, does that bother you? Were you for Trump's promise of peace? Like, how do you square this?
I view Trump on foreign policy as generally better than every other president in my lifetime, and
despite him being so hawkish.
He's been hawkish on Iran the whole time.
Well, he's hawkish everywhere, right? He pretends deterrence is like dovish policy, right? Like he'll threaten to bomb people.
I respect the hawkishness. It's a question of, are you going to actually go in? I think my view of getting involved in Iran was skepticism, but hope. Venezuela was the same thing, and I think Venezuela played out very well. So,
for who?
For us,
well, not for the Venezuelans.
Not for the Venezuelans.
Actually, no.
Venezuela seized our oil assets. We had a treaty with them. Okay, we shook hands with Venezuela and said we're going to build oil, and they said, "You got it, brother." And we were all sharing in money, and they were the wealthiest country in South America. Then they elected a democratic socialist who came in and stole our oil assets, and our country did nothing about that. So I again say the Venezuela operation skepticism. But then when Trump goes in, takes out Maduro, and just brings him to New York, which will be weird if he's found not guilty. I don't know how that'll play out. But then we get our oil assets back. I'm like, well, that's what I call justice. Now, as for Iran, this is a bigger question over the Strait of Hormuz.
Wait, I don't think they did. Didn't they steal their own didn't they nationalize Venezuelan companies?
These were American multi-billion-dollar investments to build oil infrastructure in Venezuela.
But
and we had treaties with them to do it.
Sure,
and it was an estimated $10 billion in assets stolen.
Sure, but
you do not get to invite me onto your property.
This is private American dollars, right? Does the American government owe private companies military protection if a government that they went into trade with buys out the company that they went into?
Especially when they're giving the oil to our enemies.
If Walmart
I don't care if it's true or not. It's an opinion on morality.
No. Think about the principle here. Like, let's take it out of Venezuela. If, say, Walmart has a close relationship with China China. There's a Chinese private company that they're working with. And as a result of the Communist Party, China goes, we're actually taking all these assets, and they take like $10 billion worth of Walmart principles. Should America go in there and take private company assets? We should spend taxpayer dollars to take private company assets back?
I also
Why?
So first and foremost, the question about China would actually be a question of, can we be militarily successful in doing so? In terms of what Venezuela stole, we had a treaty with them, which was at the governmental level, which we do have a treaty with China on trade. So if they're violating it, it's not just private assets that are being violated. Venezuela stole $10 billion plus in assets. We did nothing about it. All we did this time was discombobulate, take their leader out, and take back our oil industry from them, which we agreed to build with them. They broke the rules. They stabbed us in the back.
Question I got is if the Chinese buy a bunch of farmland in the United States, and then the Americans are like, actually, this is our land, and they seize it from these private Chinese companies that did everything legally, are we in the right? And I would say yes, because it's American
100%.
sovereign territory. So are Venezuelans in the right taking their sovereign territory back? It's different because it's Venezuela. That's the problem, is you justify, I mean, it's a justification of monkey tail. You got to do the strongest, hardest, brutalist winning tactic to survive.
There are, the first thing I would say is you are absolutely correct in that I will always be biased for my society and my way of life and what I think is right. And I think that if I enter an agreement with another country to build oil assets and they share in those profits, and then they take them from me, that is a violation of our moral agreement. Then if you start privately buying up under my nose through our legal system, farmland near our military bases for which you can surveil them, I'm going to tell you to knock it the F off.
Yeah, look,
I'm going to take that land back.
The product that they're actually talking about matters too, right? Like oil is definitely a geopolitical tool, right? Like it's literally civilization juice.
So it's farmland. So what the Chinese have justification?
We've already addressed it. We've already addressed it.
Oil and food, they're both important.
The farmland they're buying is near our military bases for which they're surveilling our military.
Hey, I agree, but they're doing it legally.
That's different.
Let's say that's not what they're doing. Well, let's say in the hypothetical.
It is what they're doing.
Hold on. In the hypothetical, it's more analogous to this situation where that's not, because I'm assuming you're not saying that America was actually making it military assets secretly, and I think it was actually private companies, oil drilling. So say it's private Chinese companies, as private as they can be, that own and buy farmland and are growing soybeans. In American land.
Venezuela is one of the least defensible regimes you can pick because the Venezuelan government alienated even their own people, where Maduro needed to use Cuban mercenaries in order to establish his power, where Maduro was a democratically elected politician who installed himself as dictator. He was profoundly unpopular, so he used Cuban mercenaries to install himself in power.
But nobody's defending Venezuela here. Nobody likes Venezuela. I didn't defend Venezuela.
I'm going to say it for the third time. If I have an agreement to produce oil in your country and we share in the profits, and you have a problem with that, negotiate the treaty, sever it, or otherwise.
Which they did negotiate and pay out $1 billion, just so it's clear.
Don't steal it. If you are buying land in our country that is a threat to our national security, you are a threat to our national security as per our assessment.
So the issue—
There is a moral distinction between these two things. I will still add on top of that, we are the United States, and we are always going to operate at our behest and not for the benefit of anybody else. So if that means we, in good faith, negotiate a contract with Venezuela to build oil and they steal it, we take it back.
That's not an accurate way of describing what happened.
If China buys land in our country and we deem it so, we will seize it from them. We do, because we are America working for our interests.
Sure, but then the principle that you're not mad about isn't that they're stealing from us. It's just that it's America. It's just, that's all the principle is. And what I'm saying is that's probably not good foreign policy. For example, in the Venezuela thing, as critical as I'm looking, Chevron took $1 billion payout because they agreed to dip, and they stayed actually as minority partners with Venezuela for a long time. The issue is that the two other oil barons didn't want to take the deal, and then in that case it got seized. And then they went through courts to try to get their assets back, which they were not successful in. And now the taxpayer is paying so that Mobil can have their assets back.
Yes.
The American taxpayer.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure I'm for
what is the
spending taxpayer money.
What is the point of the public coffers if not to defend the public from foreign adversaries?
I would say in this case it would be, okay, what's in the good of the public? Making sure we have oil.
Let me ask you a simpler question.
That's it. Hold on.
A guy is on his dinghy fishing off the coast of Florida when pirates show up. Why should the private taxpayer have the Coast Guard go and save him from some other country's pirates?
That's
literally the function of the military.
Are companies individuals?
What does that have to do with what I'm talking about?
Well, you're comparing a company to an individual on his boat.
What does that have to do with the
Well,
moral
an
point I made?
individual having their life and safety threatened by pirates is
they
not
wanna
the
steal
same
his
thing
boat.
as mobile.
They want to steal his boat. Should the Coast Guard stop
It's
him?
his individual property, right? In this
Should the
case,
Coast Guard stop? It's a company's property.
Just call it an Exxon tanker.
Yeah, there's an Exxon tanker and a bunch of pirates raid it. Should the Coast Guard stop the pirates?
probably the pirates, yeah.
What's the difference?
The difference is that we're
They're
negotiating
Venezuelan
now.
pirates.
It's a nation state that we have to negotiate with, and we can't just go to war with everyone
So
who
we
fucks
let
with
Venezuela
us.
seize our tankers.
I think
That's silly.
when they happened, we had massive sanctions. I believe large NATO sanctions were put against Venezuela. Nobody,
Yeah.
as you've said,
Weak.
nobody likes Venezuela. I don't like Venezuela.
Let's go-
I don't
let's
like
go back to the
communism.
original question
In each
about-
argument,
let's-
you're arguing against America's interests, which should be the opposite of the American government. You're not using rational consistency. You're arguing against the interests of American power in each individual context.
I'm not actually, because theoretically, if the American government is for American success, the thing at question here isn't Mobil. Why we don't owe Mobil anything as a company. We owe Americans
Does Mobil
gas.
pay taxes?
No, but
They
Does
do
Mo-
pay taxes, but we could negotiate a new trade
Do they-
deal
do
with
they
somebody
pay
else to
taxes
increase our
partly for the
buy of
public
oil
defense?
from somebody else,
Do they
right?
pay taxes partly for the
Instead
public
of spending
defense?
money to go blow up Venezuela, we could have negotiated contracts with other oil suppliers
These
to get cheaper
companies
oil.
pay taxes, which
Why?
includes money for public defense, for which they're entitled.
To some extent.
And I will add on top of this that Venezuela seized our oil assets to distribute oil to our adversaries.
Yeah, that did happen as well, which is
Yeah,
why we
so
engaged
we
in
stopped
sanctions.
it.
But the idea is that
The boot comes down.
This is the issue in foreign policy. When people fuck you over, you don't just immediately go to might.
We didn't. It was 20
Language.
years ago.
Why?
Why
It
not?
was 2009.
War is
We're talking-
expensive,
so
bad for economy, and
But
kills lots of people.
Roberta.
That's why.
This was 17 years ago. And they tried the legal method and none of it worked. And
Sure.
Trump said, okay, get our oil back.
Sure.
17 years later is not a short amount of time.
Yeah, and one of the issues is we didn't really get our oil back. Most of the tankers that we seized from them, we've sold off to Saudi Arabia, which only apparently the Trump admin can actually have access to the $500 million. So the American taxpayers didn't even make back the money that we spent to bail out Mobil.
We also cut off Cuba, but I want to go back to the original question so we can round this one out and jump to the next stories that we have. And it was a question about how do we feel about Donald Trump. And I will say I'm a big fan of the Abraham Accords. When Donald Trump crossed the DMZ with Kim Jong-un, I was welling up. I was nearly in tears. I mean, that was an incredible moment for the Koreas. And Donald Trump crossed into the DMZ without security. They could have killed him. They could have captured him. They could have done a lot of things. And you can say it was free, you can say it was, but it was a tremendous step towards peace. And I'd like to see more of that, so I tremendously respect it. Donald Trump's at the timeline for getting out of Afghanistan. None of this, of course, is perfect. But Donald Trump has been infinitely better on foreign policy than any president of my lifetime.
The Afghanistan pullout was horrific.
That was Joe Biden.
It was not. You just said that the pullout policy
The
was decided.
timeline was set by
No, it
Trump.
was Biden.
It was not just
Executed
Biden.
by
The
Biden.
problem is that when things happen over multiple presidencies, it's typically both
No,
administrations.
it was Joe Biden.
It was not just Joe
Trump
Biden.
had established a timeline to pull out, and Joe Biden went ahead and said, "We're not going to do that. I'm going to just do it now."
He changed the
changed
timeline to
it.
9/11 to make a
He
scene, and then
advanced
he
it,
surrendered
and then
the
they
military.
abandoned Bagram Air Force
Not only
Base.
abandoned, they surrendered military equipment,
Look,
billions of
just so it's clear,
dollars of
I'm
night
not
vision.
a fan of the way that we pulled out of Afghanistan at all. What I'm actually pointing to is a partisan blame of just one president. When, for example, when we look at economies,
Trump
we always
wasn't
just
there when
want
they
to
pulled out
blame.
of Afghanistan. What do you mean?
Trump began the pullout of it.
Which
he
we all
abandoned
want,
the
right?
Kurds.
You agree with?
Not the way we did
No,
it.
no. Not the way Biden did. Let's go back in time. Do you support, at the time when Trump said, we're going to get out of Afghanistan, is that a good thing?
I'm not sure.
You think we should have stayed in Afghanistan?
Possibly, yeah. With-
Okay, yeah,
with
I
proper
don't. I think
nation
that's
building.
morally abhorrent and psychotic.
Why? But you want to
Because
take
we spent
Venezuelan
20 years
goods
nation building,
and
trying to
throw
turn
over
Afghanistan
sovereignty?
into South
Wait,
Korea.
how is it possible that overthrowing a nation state's sovereignty is cool and base, but trying to establish democracy within a country, which I agree wasn't done very well in Afghanistan, is somehow
Who
morally
said,
abhorrent?
that first one seems to be something you've made up.
Venezuela, you're for Venezuela, which is an invasion of a nation state and killing
taking
it.
back our assets that were taken from us.
And taking their elected official and
criminal trial officials are making it.
I don't care that we don't like him. You're for it. How is
For a
this?
criminal trial
How
in
is
New York
this
City.
not morally questionable? But in the case of Afghanistan, there's
let me
no
explain
question
it
here.
as simply and monosyllabically as possible.
Sure.
Afghanistan is 20 years of nation building. Venezuela was several days.
Okay. Why did the nation building fail?
Because you cannot make Afghanis gay communists.
No. The reason that it failed is in
why.
large part because it was too expensive. So because we nation built in Japan.
Because it takes 60
exceptionally
years.
well. We nation built in Greece. We
it
nation
takes
built
60 years.
in South Korea.
That implies that all societies are the same.
I don't think they're the same.
And the Afghanis couldn't do jumping jacks. You need at least 3 generations, which we did get in the Koreas and in Japan.
You need to establish education. You need to let girls go to school, and you need to establish a middle class, which does
and they
take
were
a
in
long
active
time.
conflict the whole time in Afghanistan. It wasn't working, and they should have gotten
Well,
out
more
a long time ago.
importantly, we never worked with local experts of Afghanistan. We didn't work with the people on the ground.
Yes,
we
we
worked with
did.
like, the Kurds. No, we didn't.
We worked with the Hazaras. We worked with the northern tribes. We built up an entire northern coalition. And to pull back, you support the continuation of the occupation of Afghanistan.
I did
Let me
not.
finish.
Hold on. No.
So,
No. I did
okay,
not say I
let me
supported it. I
restate
said
that.
I don't know.
So that's an argument that allows a lot of plausible deniability.
No,
So
it
I'm
says I don't
I'm going
know
to
my
finish
answer to
argument.
that. Well, you
So-
can, but you can't put words in my mouth of what I haven't said.
Afghanistan, Venezuela. I was going to say Burma, but
She
I
said
meant
she loves
Iran.
I did not say.
So
You're being a troll.
in each place, you are positionally against American foreign policy. You're not
Nope.
operating under a unified moral code.
Nope, my
You're-
unified
She
moral-
hates America.
You're against the American foreign policy, and you're picking whatever
Respectfully-
the opposition of it is.
Respectfully, you couldn't engage in a hypothetical, so I'm not sure
Yes,
how
I ran an alternate history show for 7
my
years.
consistent
Of course
value,
I can.
my consistent. Well, you didn't, so that's
Yes,
a little
I
tough.
did.
You
I
didn't.
ran one for 7
you said
years.
Rawls isn't true because genes.
Guys,
Good job.
enough with Rawls.
But,
Rawls couldn't
It's
engage in
sticky
a
one, okay.
hypothetical because he couldn't
How
project
dare
his views
he
onto
insult
reality.
Rawls like this.
Hey.
Here, I'll tell you my consistent thread.
I-
Consistent thread is I would like to see worldwide liberal democracies emerge. That's what I would like to see.
Why?
Because I
wouldn't.
think liberal democracies tend not to go to war with each other. They lift people out of poverty best. They establish a good middle class. They establish education, and they decrease
The idea that
poverty,
every
death,
the
et
idea
cetera,
that every
et cetera.
That's your religion,
listen,
and you
the
want to
idea-
It's not my religion. It's not my religion. That's a problem.
guys.
One at a
Phil,
time.
one at a time.
Sorry, go ahead.
The idea that every society can be a liberal democracy is totally outside of the realm of possibility.
Like genes, like some people are genetically incapable of having a liberal
Just
democracy.
from custom, no, just because of customs.
Yeah,
because
I have a question. I have a question in this regard, like Liberia, for instance.
I don't know enough about Liberia
We
specifically. but-
repatriated former slaves and then established an American constitutional liberal democracy, and it devolved into cannibalism and tribal warfare.
Because why?
I don't know.
Well, the issue is for
Maybe
you to
Rudyard
say
knows. You know about
nobody
Liberia, right?
can, nobody can.
I'm not saying nobody can. We're just
Sorry,
like,
certain cultures
sometimes you
can't.
can.
Certain cultures can't. My argument would be not all the liberal democracies have to look the same. When I say liberal democracy, I don't mean superheroes that are gay. What I mean is free speech, due process,
okay,
strong
but-
institutions and
so
balance
your
of power.
argument about free speech, like there's a lot of societies that totally reject free speech out of hand.
Yeah, and they're wrong.
Well, I mean, so
they should be
wrong.
brought to
But
heel.
the point that I'm making is those societies choose to be that way. They
Sure.
choose to not be liberal democracies.
Well, they shouldn't have the choice.
And we can't make other societies have our values.
No, I think we can
guys,
convince them to have our
I want to
values.
grab this.
don't.
I want to get
I
to this
don't.
next story, which is actually relevant to the conversation. I want to say one last thing on this, in that I think there's a realignment that's going to happen. The progressives that lost in Illinois lost largely to AIPAC-backed candidates, which many people consider to be a shift. Plus, we're seeing the media purchases by pro-Israel, pro-Zionist individuals. I tweeted this earlier. I think that we're going to see a political realignment where one party becomes interventionist and one party becomes anti-interventionist. I'm not entirely sure if the Democrats will be the anti or pro-interventionist, considering they're very critical of Trump right now, but it is shifting. And with AIPAC backing these candidates, Democrats may actually end up in the we should go into these countries. And then with Tucker, Candace, and Megyn being loud right-wing voices, the Republican may become staunchly anti-intervention, which shifts the dynamic from woke versus anti-woke into war and pro-war, which is exactly what we were seeing with Obama versus McCain after the Bush era, where Obama played the I'm against the war, and McCain was like, well, sometimes you need it. So again, I think the point you're making about why we may have, I'm not saying we should have, may have needed to stay in Afghanistan is a point made by many neoliberals, more moderate Democrats, about nation building. But let's jump to this story real
This is really
quick.
important. That sometimes you need to do evil to create order in life, and sometimes you need to create chaos to produce good, because totalitarian systems that have too much. So this is an instance of going into Venezuela, of doing something predominantly evil to create order in the realm.
Okay, we're gonna
and
jump
you
to-
just have to always have that debate.
We're going to jump to the story. We got this from the New York Post. U.S. territory turned tropical maternity ward has produced thousands of American babies for parents living in China. Amazing. The Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands is a U.S. territory northeast of Guam in the Pacific Ocean. It's been flooded with so-called birth tourists since 2009, when then President Barack Obama introduced a visa waiver program for Chinese nationals. What a scumbag. I say, strip them all of their citizenship.
Absolutely.
No more birthright citizenship, and they can't come back.
Yeah, I mean,
Kyla's gone? Okay, everyone agrees.
Yeah, probably, to be honest with you.
She's going to be like, no, China should be allowed to be president of the United States.
It's just that's civilizational suicide. I mean, the idea, the fact that there is evidence that there are thousands and thousands of people that are going there just to have children, particularly from China, right? China is absolutely an adversary. They're not a partner. They're not even rivals. They're an adversary. And the idea that they should be allowed to be American citizens just because they're born there, then brought back to China to be raised as Chinese people.
This is why I can't stand liberals, man, because they're just like, they're going to stand around while these Chinese people doing birth tourism are literally saying in 20 years you will start seizing power and assets from the American people. And the American liberals are like, they're going to be standing there as the Chinese guy goes like, I have every right to take your stuff because I am American. And they're going to go, guess you're right.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be used as a vector of attack against the United States.
Is it just that people don't, I'm asking you too, Rudyard, I mean, you study this stuff, that people just don't have that outside perspective of the system? They get in it, they get emotionally involved with like, yeah, we're accepting of people, but like, is it just that like dumb first order thinking?
So James Burnham has the best narrative about this. He wrote a book in 1961 called The Suicide of the West. And the thesis of the book was that liberals do not have a morally consistent code. They just support whatever degrades the West fast enough. And so in 1961, he said that this would cause the suicide of Western civilization, because the liberals don't have a consistent code. They would just push for these various policies that would degrade the character of Western civilization, and then people would give concessions to moderate liberals, which would then pass to radical Marxists. And so he said radical Marxists would take over the institutions, which is what we've seen.
Yeah.
And these people, I agree with you, Tim, these people have this is why I brought up Rawls and the Enlightenment. These people have no concept that there are others who do not share their values who will use violence against them. And if someone was willing to use violence and will not share your values, you have to pair that with violence.
I often notice people are very like laissez-faire about, about whatever, bringing new people in, changing the system. They're kind of open to it until it affects them directly. They get mugged. And then they're like Anna Kasparian, she's completely flipped after she got attacked by some dude outside her house.
I don't know that she's completely flipped, but she's definitely
once it affects
softened.
you. And so to make sure that people don't have to face it and have that traumatic realignment, that you can maybe educate them ahead of time and get them to kind of see what mass migration can do, see how societies can be destroyed with mass migration as used as a weapon. But like to get people to realize it without really experiencing it, I don't know how. I played a lot of Crusader Kings, and I would watch countries get flipped with cultural, the culture just takes it, and then people vote for their own demise. I'm like, that's how I learned, but sorry.
Yeah, you'd have to establish cultural traditions to, because this is something a lot of tribal societies do, where they have rites of passage that force people to grow up through these various rituals that make them comprehend the horror of the world. Because industrial civilization has protected us from the brutality of the human condition, and so people are just not aware of how bad things can get. And that's why we're having Mouse Utopia.
And so, like horror movies and stuff, is that part of why people like them? Is because it helps them see into what it could be?
Yeah, people like horror movies as like a reset button, it's because people physiologically process reality, and so if someone physiologically does not understand something, they're going to have trouble understanding it in abstract intellectually.
And so,
but like we don't expect. This is so. I think you guys are like true about something, right? Which is that like by and large, people are a culmination of their experiences, and that's about it, right? What you're talking about, like Anna Kasparian, right? What you're talking about, like the morally lucky individual who just happens to grow up with the whatever morals you prefer and loves them because they grew up with them, right? But I also think that we can experience and observe things and think of things, and develop a sense of self outside of these experiences, it just takes significant work, right? In the case of learning math, it's really hard to experience high levels of math, Euclidean geometry. However, if you engage in it at high levels over and over as like a rigorous mental practice in the way that you could do with philosophy, right? You can actually come to observe and understand these things and have it kind of phenomenologically affect how you engage with the world or think.
Well, let's go back to the original question, which is, there's an island where Chinese people are flying, giving birth, and then leaving, so that those babies will have standing to be president and be American citizens. Should we put a stop to that?
Yeah, probably.
Should we end birthright citizenship?
I think it's complicated because it's a very American tradition, right? There's a really good debate between two of my friends. I don't know if I could shout out other creators. I think you've had both of them on now. Pisco and Ryan Mullally, when they were at Word War Debate, talked about this, and I think both of them had really good arguments. Ryan saying birthright means an implied patriotism because obviously the founding fathers didn't know about like planes, right? So if you were born here, you're probably invested because you're not going to leave very easily, right? And Pisco kind of addressed that, well, birthright citizenship is about the individual. It's not about their parents, and that matters. So I think there's really good arguments on either side.
No. It's silly that someone from China can fly here specifically to give birth and then like fly here a week before birth, give birth, and then fly back a week later.
I agree, but there might be a way to like policy carve out in such a way that people can't abuse it like that but we still protect the birthright citizenship.
Babies?
Yes, some way to do that work, because I think Pisco points out really aptly, I forget which amendment it is, and I'm going to butcher his arguments. So I'm very sorry, Pisco. I think the 14th, yeah. But the jurisdiction of the state it's talking about is the child. It's not the parents, and a child is not responsible for their parents' sins, their parents' heritage, any of these sort of things, especially
that's not what jurisdiction thereof was like. If you look at the debates on the 14th
but in
Amendment,
the American law idea, the idea is that you can come here and be born here, and that makes you American. And yes, there are people abusing it, but the question might be, is there a way to prevent the abuse while maintaining the principle of what this is?
The 14th Amendment was specifically for post-Civil War, addressing the issue of slaves. And the point of, if you were born here, you were a slave, was past tense, not future. The idea was, all of the slaves who were born here are citizens. That's what they were saying. Mm-hmm. There was a debate on this in which the guy said, well, no one's going to construe this to mean that foreigners, diplomats, or their children would have
fly here
citizenship. And that was back when we didn't have planes and people were like traveling 3 months. So it was actually debated, and then it was, Wong Kim, what was it? Wong v. Kim Ark or whatever? I don't know. I can't remember the name of the court precedent. Where they were like, no, anybody born here at this point forward will be a citizen. Despite that not being the intention of the 14th Amendment.
There was never a moral argument behind it. It was just practicality. Only really nations in the New World do birthright.
Mark the United States.
Yeah.
Birthright citizenship is just nations in the New World with a handful of exceptions because these were countries with high demographic turnover. If you went to the Founding Fathers and made that moral argument, they just wouldn't have a concept for that.
Sure, but the principle that's emerging is the
What's
same.
What's the principle? What's the moral principle?
The principle here would be that you are not held and bound by like the actions or identity of what your parents were.
Why is that good?
I think that's good because, for example, being held accountable for the sins or like history of your parents is something that was often done in older world orders that I think was harmful. I don't think that I should be culpable for the behaviors, the actions, the viewpoints, or the identity of my parents.
I completely agree. Like, if someone illegally enters my home and then gives birth, that kid doesn't just live in my house now. I am not responsible for the crime they committed.
What if it's a really cute baby?
No, baby's got to go.
But reality also exists.
I'll call an ambulance
we
for him.
fundamentally exist in a world of distinct countries that have their own histories, and the reality is not that we are fundamentally born because the baby boomers are going to pass on a crap ton of debt to my generation, Gen Z. By this logic. And you can say, of course, it'd be nice if we got rid of the debt. I am going to be stuck with this debt. I am going to be forced the generational inheritance the baby boomers gave me. And I cannot do anything about this. This is the fundamental reality of the human condition. And I believe in creating politics around fundamental realities, not around abstract principles, and then enforcing them on reality whether or not they make sense.
So if your parent's a thief, should everyone look at you skeptically for the next 15 to 40 years of your life because your parent was a thief? It might be in your genes.
This was something that the Western tradition had established. We had already thought this through, where Christianity and the Greco-Roman tradition said that the individual should be judged for their actions. But this was something that was thought through at the time. It wasn't just It wasn't a post ad hoc rationalization for a legal structure. Where we established this legal structure because it was convenient at the time, it was not a moral principle.
I think we form society based off of literal reality, like you're saying, but also off of abstract concepts like our rights are given to us by God.
Whoa, man, reality is complicated. And my theory is that it's like the masculine and the feminine. The ideal and the material match up together. And so there's a dynamic between them where the ideal can pull a little bit and the material can pull a little bit. And it's a negotiation between the two.
So do you think right
that's
now
actually to my point, right? What you're saying is what I'm saying, right? I agree that, for example, the national debt that the boomers created is something that my generation and your generation are going to have to deal with. But at the same time, I might be able to say the way that I identify as an individual, the things that I carry into this world, as far as like maybe things like opportunity and circumstance, shouldn't be nearly as neatly tied to my parents. I think that that's a very old world idea that I don't like.
But if your
right?
parents,
there's these tension between these two
things. If your parents literally birthed you here, then your whole world identity would revolve around the fact that they did that.
Only if you lived here would it matter.
If you were born here, so it totally depends on what your parents did.
If you lived here.
You're saying it's your identity shouldn't be anything to do with your parents, but your parents decided where you're going to be born.
Nothing to do with your parents. The idea is that you shouldn't have to inherit their actions, right?
But
you become a citizen of the country they choose to birth you in.
To some extent, well, they do, but we don't, right? My dad, he's not any of these things, but say my dad is an alcoholic and a thief. That doesn't mean that I am accountable for the time that he stole from somebody. This is why, like, lands rights can get really messy, and we often say in the case of, like, is that stolen land or not? We go, well, maybe my ancestors, but for how long do we have to pay for that, right?
Yeah,
Our ancestors,
no 40 acres and a mule. I shouldn't have to pay for that.
By that logic, white people should not be held to the actions of their ancestors because we should not inherit the costs of our ancestors.
Wait a minute.
And also, on top of it, I said that the development of these moral codes is a conflict between the material and the ideal. What you're basically saying is that if the ideal is a man and the material is the woman, the man should just totally dominate the woman without reference to the material realities.
That's not what I'm
guys,
saying
wait,
at
hold
all.
on. I want to change my opinion because I just realized something.
That you're a Democrat.
nice.
No,
I did it.
For the longest
I win.
time, I just thought I was a quarter Korean, but then I found out that I'm actually 5% Japanese. Now I'm in favor of the sins of the father because this means the United States government's got to give me reparations because I'm Japanese. So pay up.
You have to prove that they stole stuff from you too.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do.
No.
I think the Japanese had to submit receipts of being like, hey,
be
but
right
also
back.
part of why they
would
got
argue
paid back.
that's racist, that I
But
shouldn't
also
do.
part of why they got
code.
paid back is because it was actually within the same
Do
generation.
you guys think that we're out of balance with so like Rudyard, you were saying about the politics based on the harsh reality and politics based on the philosophy, that I think we've become so into philosophy with post. Thank you, Rudyard. Yeah, talk me in. That we become like in postmodernism that we're so philosophical heavy that we've lost sight with just brute reality at points.
We're radically delusional. I think that's just obvious. Our moral code is no frame for reality.
Yep.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Thanks.
I agree with that.
I agree with the internet. It's easy to become something you're not, to play in fantasy. And since the end of the Cold War, we've just been carte blanche. We haven't had repercussions.
How about we go nuclear and jump to this next story? Donald Trump is the Antichrist. Now that I've sufficiently made many of you angry, and I'll say that I'm joking, there is something interesting because we've got this tweet from Drew Tang, who says, remember when me and Donnie Darkened and Sovereign Bra went on Timcast in December of 2023 and quoted this exact verse to him saying it would happen to Trump, and then the FBI had the episode taken off YouTube. Wait. Oh, that's right. The episode was taken off of YouTube. And Leonardo Joni, you know you love her, she posted this. What do we think of this? And it shows Trump with his ear bleeding. I saw that one of the heads of the beast seemed wounded beyond recovery, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. Revelation. Now, what's really interesting about this is that when I saw this tweet, I recalled sitting down with these individuals, and they literally explained to me that Donald Trump would be injured on the right side of his body in some capacity because that was if he was the Antichrist, that was a symbol of the Antichrist. And so when I saw this, I was like, no, wait a minute, because they did say it on the show. So I asked Grok, and it said the idea the Antichrist will be injured on the right side comes primarily from interpretations of biblical prophecy. Woe to the worthless shepherd who leaves the flock. A sword shall be against his arm and against his right eye. His arm shall completely wither, and his right eye shall be totally blinded. Well, in all seriousness, Trump is not completely blinded, but the bullet did hit his right ear. And what they said on the show was that Trump would be injured somewhere on the right side of his face, not necessarily his eye. And then, ladies and gentlemen, hammer drop time. Nasty bruise on Trump's hand breaks through layers of makeup. The president showed it off to Irish leader on St. Patrick's Day. So this is a story the left has been playing like crazy. Trump's right arm, his right hand, has been consistently bruised for going on months now, which, again, I am not saying is the Antichrist, but a lot of these people who
Men
believe...
wearing makeup is pretty Antichrist behavior when you
Wearing
think about
makeup?
it.
Well, he's trying to cover up that his right arm
I don't care why he's wearing it. It's man
is
wearing
bruised.
it. I'm kidding. By the
is
way.
perhaps withering.
Damn.
I just
Well,
think that was interesting. I don't know.
If the Antichrist is here, my personal take is that people can behave in a Christ-like manner or in an Antichrist-like behavior. And if you're super famous and powerful and you start being sinful, then you're exhibiting Antichrist-like behaviors, and you'll be like one of those Antichrist people.
Can we,
That's my
Ian,
personal take. But now let's just pretend there is a
has
guy that
nothing
is
to
the
do-
Antichrist. That means the second coming is arriving.
He doesn't know enough.
Which is what the argument is about the war in Israel and Netanyahu saying the Messianic era will come, but it won't be next Thursday. And then you've got people pointing to Donald Trump. You've got the efforts to breed the red heifer. I am not saying it's prophecy, but I am suggesting that people want it to be.
Rudyard, were you going to say something?
Trump doesn't know enough esoteric religious lore to be the Antichrist.
Also, didn't the verse say that he was gravely wounded? In the case, he literally wasn't gravely wounded. He had his ear nicked.
He was shot in the head.
He literally wasn't gravely wounded. That was the miracle, is that despite having somebody
No, but he was
shooting at his
healed.
head.
So
Eventually.
People have predicted the Book of Revelations 50 times and it is yet to have happened. That is a 0% track record.
Sure, but once it does, then they'll be right.
Then we're all dead.
Perma bears.
So the Antichrist is
always
deeply
right.
knowledgeable in religion? Is that what you were
So
saying?
if someone were to be the Antichrist, they'd have a wide variety of esoteric lore in order to found the anti-religion against Christ. And so you could assess their actions and their behaviors based off their knowledge of religious lore.
Could it be
Okay, hear me out.
business?
He's hiding his power level, okay? He does have the religious lore, but he can't show people yet because he
doubt
can't
that.
let
Could,
them know.
could his knowledge of religious lore be his knowledge of business?
No.
Seeing
No.
that the dollar is now what people worship?
They're not transferable.
Are you sure? Because
I'm
people seem
pretty
to
sure.
worship money.
I'm pretty sure.
I mean, money's God on earth, is it not?
No, that's not how the mystic lore goes.
Okay.
It is now.
So it's going to be like a priest. They say it's going to be a priest.
If he is making weird esoteric remarks and he drops these things inside his content that demonstrates that he knows more than he says, then you'll know.
What would be an example of a weird esoteric remark?
So I'm trying to figure out.
He's trying to figure out if you're the Antichrist, by the way.
I'm
Don't
not.
tell him. Don't tell him.
I'm not. So
That's what the
when
Antichrist
someone
would say,
when
right?
someone when people. Different mystics have different code words they use to demonstrate the religious tradition they're operating in. So you can look at the code words they're operating under to figure out what their level is. So Hermetics do that, Gnostics do it, Platonists do it.
Okay. So his philosophy, not a Gnostic, not a Platist, but what is he? A secular businessman?
Yeah, he is.
That's his philosophy.
He's a
So
hedonist.
is he speaking in code?
No, he's not.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty
'Cause
sure.
Maybe we just don't know the code.
I'm pretty sure.
This guy knows
Well,
everything.
I mean, if he doesn't know, if we don't know the
Wears
code, then
glasses,
no one
obviously.
knows the
Some
code. I
people
mean, is he
think they
speaking
know
in
the
code?
code.
Phil, is something happening that we don't know about?
I mean,
Many
if we
things
don't know,
I don't know, dude. I think I can't even joke about it. If there was an Antichrist on Earth right now, who the fuck else would it be than Donald Trump? It would have to be that guy.
It was
Why?
Peter Thiel.
well, Peter Thiel thinks
It
it's
would
Greta
be-
Thunberg.
It would be
Wait,
the
what?
weaker Justin Bieber.
Or like Elon Musk. It's just a really
Does Greta
wealthy...
Thunberg know enough esoteric religious
There's
lore
like a-
to be the Antichrist?
Ross just thought, I think it was in Ross's interview with Peter Thiel, he was like, oh yeah, it's Greta Thunberg. She's the Antichrist. I can't remember his reasoning.
Peter Thiel is having a meeting, I guess, today or this week at the Vatican or something like that. Let me see what I can.
Okay,
pull
Don,
up.
I don't think you're the Antichrist, by the way. I already said my philosophy. I think all of us can exhibit the behavior and become it. So don't say stuff like I hate my enemies, worship pain on your enemies, because that's wrath. That is a sin. You
Ian's
said
a
it-
Quaker.
Well, man, what
Well,
if
you'd be
Karl Marx
Antichrist-like.
was? What if Karl Marx was the Antichrist because he established a religion based upon material things, and he was also a Jew, and then it was an anti-church founded upon envy rather than love?
Who would be? Then what would happen in the story leading to Christ's return?
So some people think that the book of, so I'm not a Book of Revelations guy. That's not my thing. But some people think that Book of Revelations takes course over centuries, and you're compressing a complex historic event like the fall of Rome into a singular chapter.
They'll post hoc update their theory to match like whatever's happened in the timeline for their preference.
So the response, the antidote to communism would be the return of Christ. in this story. Christ
Would
would
you
return and
arguably with
solve
communism getting
Marx's
crushed
issue.
in the 70s, maybe we're in heaven now?
No, this is
I don't know.
technically this is
Sucks.
hell.
It's just one way of looking at reality.
Communism
Would
has
it be
crushed.
absolutely wild if, like, in 2 years, like, literally Jesus just came back?
It would be
I
pretty
think
wild.
Jesus'
Jesus is my
spirit's
homie, so
here,
that'd be cool.
dancing
wild.
with us right now.
Jesus' spirit is within the Christian
Oh
community.
yeah, no. Here's a question though: when he comes back, does he like descend from the heavens, or is he already here, and then like reveals himself?
He's inside you.
What I would guess,
Quaker says inside you.
what I would guess is that he would embody the spirit within his action, and people wouldn't notice.
That's what I'm talking about. Subversive, dude.
So nobody would know he was here, or
Wait, why would he not notice?
know that
Jesus knew
Jesus
that he was
is
Christ.
subversive.
But the return.
You know,
Jesus knew he was
it's gonna be
Christ.
really funny when like it happens and there's like the rapture happens, but then all the Orthodox people are still here and they think they're right, but they're not.
Yeah, all those
I'm
EO
just
bros,
kidding,
all
Orthodox.
those
I was just
EO
ragging on
bros
you.
down bad. The schism.
The Roman Catholics
the
are all
schism
gone.
really
They're like,
meant something.
It's crazy that for centuries leading up to Christ, in the Jewish community, they would constantly talk about the rise of their Messiah, and the Messiah was about to come, and the Messiah would defeat the Romans, and then they didn't figure out it was Christ.
Well, did he defeat? I mean, I guess.
So wait,
kinda-
hold on. So when he comes back, who are the Romans? Like he's gonna go to Italy and like defeat the Roman Catholics.
This is why I said I wasn't a Book of Revelations guy, because I don't think I can actually figure this out.
So when Christ returns, he defeats the Romans.
So there was Christ emerged from a Jewish messianic tradition that stemmed back for centuries leading up to him. In this tradition, they thought that their Messiah would arise and then defeat the Roman Empire because Israel was a Roman colony.
Yeah.
And
That's why they don't like Jesus, the Christian Jesus, because he wasn't political
yeah,
against the Romans.
that's exactly right, actually.
Oh,
They-
look at that, EO bros. Jesus wasn't political. Interesting.
No, Jesus wasn't political. He believed in God. And so Jesus emerged and he said, we should love each other, we should accept the Roman colonization because the kingdom of heaven lies within. And they killed him for that because they were looking for the Messiah, but then he didn't have the message they wanted, that they launch a war against the Romans.
You know, the White House is Roman. It's Roman architecture. They even have it as
That
white
proves it.
pillars, unpainted, as it because the Roman architecture, all the paint washed off. These idiot Americans came and they rebuilt it without paint. So what is this? Return of Christ going to come overthrow the vestiges of the Roman Empire? That's the guise of the American oligarchy and
Nah.
like reset the system to a republic again.
Everyone used Roman architecture at the point.
But they forgot to paint the stuff. The Roman statues weren't white back in the day. That's what they get wrong.
Yeah, they were all crazy rainbows.
Yeah.
You know, they were woke.
And then so the Jews will be freed from the tyranny of the American Empire, the British Empire, and then the ones that have strayed and have forgotten what God is will return to God.
They need to rebuild the temple, and then the prophecy can be fulfilled.
No, and the red heifers.
Oh,
they gotta
yeah.
get the cow.
Genetic engineering.
They're trying to, like, which is crazy. They're trying to manufacture the end of times.
I think this whole Jesus.
I like this reality. I don't want this reality to end.
Yeah, it's good. It's gonna go
Well,
for a
it's
long time.
you know, one of my simulation theories is that we're just an AI-generated television entertainment show for the progenitors. So they made this. Think about it this way: instead of making a show like we view a show, you create. You get an AI to auto-generate the stories, and it's like a real-time progressive thing you can just turn on and watch, and then be like, I love the Trump show. Like, we just watched President Trump be crazy, you know?
This
It's a-
AI is an absolute sexual freak.
But it's
then,
not AI.
Okay?
It's just
For
I.
sure, bro. There's gonna be a lot of porn for people to watch.
Whoa, man! What if reality
That's why
is a
OnlyFans makes money.
What if reality is a dream by the gods in order to simulate different realities to figure out what does and doesn't work so that they can repurpose this into the tree of life?
Yeah, and it's not AI, it's I. That's why we
Whoa,
think of ourselves. We
guys.
call ourselves I. It's intelligence. It's not artificial. This is actual I.
We got to jump to this next story so we can explain to you, my friends, you need to understand just how powerful AI has become. While I wouldn't describe this as family friendly, maybe you don't want your kids watching it.
That's how you make family.
But it is
Kids get
very
fed.
funny. Take a look at this AI generated trailer for a movie that you wish existed.
3 years after a string of brutal, unsolved murders of local co-eds with impossibly fat milkers, the women of Delta Delta D will be headed to a new space station as part of NASA's Project Bust.
Scary, the titty killer just disappeared. We're going to be 250 miles up. The only person watching us get changed is going to be a 60-year-old man at Cape Sinigo. You know, I heard in space your boobs actually get bigger.
Why exactly are they sending a shuttle full of sorority girls to space?
Son, the only thing bigger than the NASA budget after this is going to be the strain on those girls' sweaters.
This is like the plot of a movie written by a 12-year-old boy.
This is the first time I felt safe since the titty killer.
You don't think it's him, do you?
Who else would go all the way to space?
It's like a physics test for an AI.
The boys
engine.
down here tell me you're flat as a board. If that's right, you're basically invisible to them. You might be our only hope.
This is crazy. Do you guys remember when we reviewed Capital of Conformity?
Yeah.
Amazing. Let me contrast this for you guys. Capital of Conformity, because this was a couple years ago. That was see if I can pull it up. And real quick, I'll only play like 2 seconds for you.
You.
Oh man,
Yes, you.
So good.
Do you dread waking up in the morning? Are you feeling helpless in your society? Perhaps even a bit lost? Well, look no further. At the Capitol, we offer an escape, a new beginning, a lifetime of unending joy. We have an abundance of attractions so captivating, you'll wonder how you ever lived without them.
I recommend, if you guys have not seen Capital of Conformity from Azay Alter, you must watch it. And I will tell you what's really sad about this. This short film, it's 2 minutes and 42 seconds, and it's brilliantly done. But the limitations of AI video made this movie feel like a nightmare.
Yeah.
The faces are all melding together. People are walking in weird ways. It feels like you're in a nightmare, and it works perfectly. But as AI gets better, it loses that. So now we just have the titty killer, which is really, really good. And it's crazy that we've gotten to this point in AI generation. Apparently, C-Dance 3, China's new AI video model, it's not released yet, but these are the leaks. In 30 seconds, it can render a 17-minute short film. Just think about how psychotic that is. When this comes out, you're going to type in short film about Titty Killer 5, and it will make a full movie for you. And then, depending on your proclivities, it might be worse than just Titty Killer.
Well, I just gotta say, we've seen it 3 times, so I feel like I know what some people's search history will be in this robot. Okay.
Titty Killer. I don't want them to die. I want them to play games with each other, like board games. I want Titty Candyland in outer space.
You know, I didn't expect that to open up learning more about you, but that's fair enough.
But we did play it. It is incorrect. We played it 2.5 times because I didn't see the beginning the first time when he says this.
3 years after a string of brutal unsolved murders of local co-eds with impossibly fat milkers. The
4 times. The important plot lore. The important plot lore there, yeah.
Dude, the movies that people are going to make are going to melt your eyeballs.
This is already good. They're going to do retro where they're like, give me AI, a version of it, but AI 2025 March 17th version. Just like we make 8-bit video games still.
Yeah, it is worth noting it is worth pointing out that it was a very, very short amount of time where you could get that, I guess, surreal quality in AI videos where it was like almost like Uncanny Valley, like it was just creepy. Like everyone's familiar with the Will Smith eating spaghetti and how that was almost a nightmare in and of itself. Yep. Like it was just so creepy looking, and obviously that's gone nowadays. And I'm not even sure if you could get an AI to produce that quality anymore. I actually, to be honest with you, I imagine eventually it will be able to do that. You know, they'll be able to say, look, make it as if this. But you can't just prompt it to do something that's that. I don't know if I want to say the texture is a certain way. I don't know if that's the right way to articulate it, but the Capital of Conformity was super creepy.
Yeah, I recommend it.
It was the imperfection in it that was so creepy.
I asked Roseanne if now's the time to stop making movies and to start just focus on AI because the effort, and she and Jake, her son, were like, no, now's the time.
No
to make
way,
movies.
dude. Look at this. I mean, look, if you want to make a movie, you just do this.
That's what you could.
This is crazy.
But
I mean, look, aside from the fact that it's funny,
while you're on set, literally while you're not shooting, you could be making another movie.
I'm wondering who made
laptop.
this.
Yeah, we should shout these guys out. What were you saying, Carter?
I was saying maybe Roseanne meant that now's the time to make it because there won't be any more time after this gets so good.
Could be.
So like maybe you should, if you're gonna do it now.
And show the world like, hey, human art's still good.
Yeah.
Even though this is great.
Oh my God! Wait,
Is there a part 2?
There's actually a bunch of these.
Good. Are there 4?
Oh, there's actually 1 through 4.
Let's watch
Titty
all
Killer.
of them.
So
Yeah.
this is Titty Killer in space. I get it.
I'm trying to figure out who made this, but apparently there's a 1 through 4 as well that you can watch.
I hope
We
one of
won't
them's
put it up.
underground in the sewer system of New York.
Is that hot for you?
You know what movie was great? Chud.
I didn't see
Remember
it.
that one?
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
That's correct. That's correct.
Absolutely.
Chud.
Chud.
The
Never
80s.
seen that.
You know what we need to do? We need a nuclear war. We need one. Yeah, we need a nuclear war to wipe out all of our digital infrastructure so that we're forced to go back to an era of the 90s where we had Blockbuster Video.
That sucked though.
No
it took
way,
so long
dude.
to do stuff. That's
Yeah,
the
but
problem.
all
No.
the best culture came from 90s to like 2010s. All of it. The
Yes.
emo,
1994.
punk.
That's
Oh,
no,
so
only
good.
94 was the year,
94.
dude.
1994 was the peak of
86
humanity.
was the shit. 94 was
That's
the
what I said,
bomb.
up to
97 was the.
2010.
No.
was when it started to
94,
change.
2015.
94 is the greatest year of humanity. Everybody agrees.
That's
Thank
when
you. That's
for
when
the
I was born.
Toadies were kicking off. I mean, it was a great
all
year.
of the
but it was
albums you
boring.
know from the 90s came out in 94.
Credit for 94.
All of
No,
the
no,
big
no, no,
90s
no.
albums.
I was
No,
born
I mean, I
in
know them all,
January,
but
so
not-
it was the best
and
year.
you know
I
that-
was
you know
born
that
in.
94 was
Smashing
the most-
Pumpkins was
1994.
93. Siamese Dream was before that, I believe.
Ian
Yes,
Miller
yes, best, but
won the
Melancholy.
gold medal on Big Ben, the coolest horse in the world, 1994.
What happened?
Nothing.
Hey, the 90s were, they only seem cool in retrospect. It's like that nostalgia. Being there was boring as fuck. You
Anything
couldn't-
from 90s to 2015 just like was, I don't know, like, bro, Gen Z, look, they dress better
This
than
is-
we ever did,
and-
but they don't have any, like, they don't
Bro,
have goth or
live
punk or
Style
emo.
sucked in the 90s, I think.
Live,
I don't
Throwing
feel it.
Copper, 94. Bush, 16 Stone, 94. The Cranberries, 94.
Cranberries.
What's what we got? Tori Amos, some
Little
whatever.
Earthquakes,
The
that was our first
Toadies was
album.
94.
Yeah.
We have Neil
Possum
Young. I
Kingdom.
mean, that's fine. Soul Coughing, 94.
They were all great. 94
Dinosaur Jr., 94.
Really, you go back to 91.
They were
91 and
great.
94 were
Northampton.
like.
Let's see what else we
U2 was
got.
kicking it.
Smashing Pumpkins, of course, 94. You've got Bad Religion in 94. You've got what is it? There's a bunch of songs I'm not.
It's
super,
when we
a
were
bunch of
from like
bands I'm not super
Mr.
familiar
Big to
Rancid.
Nirvana, you know, that
Korn.
transition.
Stone Temple Pilots.
That was their second
Purple,
album, though.
Veruca
Yeah.
Salt.
So the 90s,
Bro,
listen, I grew up in the
Oasis.
90s.
Oasis.
I'm an avid kid of the 90s.
The
It
Offspring
sucked, I can
smash.
tell you.
They suck now, but we'll give them that one.
Ian, why do you hate
Blur.
the 90s so much?
REM.
It was just
REM.
Sonic
boring.
Youth.
Because I'm an information guy. I like to learn, and it took so long to learn anything before the internet. It was awful. You'd go to the.
You have to read.
You'd
Jar
have
of
to look up
Flies.
books if you could even find the book. If you didn't even know what you were looking for, so it's like you go to card catalogs at the library. I'm like, I got to be home by 6 o'clock.
Soundgarden,
Music
Super
was
Unknown.
incredibly good in the 90s.
I know, I agree with that.
It was extremely good.
I listened to it 2+ hours a day every day, literally. Radio. I taped songs off the radio. I just laid in bed. All I did was like read and listen to music. That was or ride bikes or video games. But
Like, you couldn't have
it was
Primus
so-
nowadays.
Primus.
Primus is phenomenal.
No, wow. Do you know that Pink Floyd had a #1 album in 94?
No, I
The
didn't know
Wall.
No,
No, that didn't come out.
That's
No, it
nice
was
to
the
me as well, by
Division
the way.
Bell.
Yeah, Division
Pink
Bell was
Floyd's
pretty
album.
good. Tom
Wow.
Petty, dude. Tom Petty's greatest hits was great. Toto's greatest hits, past to present. I think
The
it was a little
Lion
different.
King was the #1 album for like 3 months.
I mean, U2, Automatic
Wow.
for the People, REM, groundbreaking. But so okay, I agree with that. But that
the
doesn't make
final
up for
season of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
good. But you had to wait till like Thursday at 8 p.m. to watch.
Yep.
TV was golden like 2003
It was so much
to
better.
2015.
It was so much better when we had to wait and we didn't know. When you were like, you'd pick up the phone and you'd call your friend's house and you'd be like, "Is Billy home?" And she'd be like, "I don't know where he is." But guess I'm not going to see him.
But that
and you hang out,
sucked
that was
because then
it.
you just sit around all night.
No, I'd go to
you
the
went to
park.
try and find
You'd
everyone.
go to the
Kick the
park and
ball
see if
by
they were
yourself.
there.
But they-
No,
often
you
they
go
weren't.
to and then they were, and you were like,
Oh.
everybody would hang out in the same places because that's how you found each other.
You look for all the bikes.
Look for all the bikes.
Yeah, but then you get beat up if they were the wrong kids.
I mean,
Oh, well, yeah.
did you get beat up a lot when you were a kid?
Not a lot, but enough to learn that humans are vicious animals.
He's still traumatized to this day.
Yeah.
Hasn't gotten over
Condolences,
it.
I'm sorry.
Hey, it happened. It was because I was too smart. I would always raise my hand in
That's,
class.
Yep.
And
I
the other
understand
kids
that.
started picking on
I mean,
me.
just he's so smart in the show. Sometimes we all just want to
I
beat
didn't
him up.
realize that they were getting annoyed. 'cause
Rudyard's been just
the
wincing
teacher-
and just growling
The teacher
the whole
would call
time.
on me. I'd raise my hand. Obvious, easy answer. They're just repeat what we already told you. I'd answer. Okay, next question. They ask. No one. I'd raise my hand again, and they just look over me at the room like, anyone? Okay, Ian. I'd answer again. Third time, they do it again. No one would answer. I'd do it again. Eventually, the kids turned on me like they thought I was trying to be too good or something.
You should have told them that you were just better than they are.
I didn't know that at the time, though.
All right, we're going to go to your Rumble rants and Super Chats. So smash the like button, share the show with everyone you've ever met in your life, including your neighbor and their dog. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast, of course. That Uncensored Show will be coming up at rumble.com/Timcast IRL. But let's see what you guys have to say. Pinochet says, rule of law, LOL. There is no incentive to follow laws anymore, not to mention the laws and systems politicians skirt and ignore. There will never be justice in this country again.
But
no,
he's
no.
Pinochet.
Not never again. Well, his name is actually Pinochet's helicopter tours.
Of course he'd say that. He's Pinochet.
Justice will come again, but only with moral homogeneity. And I think every society goes through this where you have a moral homogeneity, and then it ebbs and flows, and then there's a clash. This is weren't you saying, Rudyard, that like life is built upon opposition?
It is, yeah. The duality of
there must be opposition to our worldview for it to be challenged and evolve.
Yeah, that's true.
Otherwise, we just sit around like dodo birds, just be all fat.
What's the best way to bring about homogeneous?
So
that's what the liberal economic order wants. They want global homogeny.
They want global homosexuality, but
no, they want
global homogenization.
If you want homogeneity, you can either have everyone mate together, or you can segment into smaller populations.
Well, they're trying that first one.
Yeah, and I don't want a purely homogenous country because you look at Scandinavia,
Iceland.
So
they're all cousins.
Yeah, that's true. But also they're hyper-conformist societies. And in a place as big as in America, we're not all going to be homogenous. The question is what groups are fighting each other.
Yeah, but they're happy to be conformist.
I don't think they are. They have a super high suicide rate.
Well, that's because of the weather, though.
They're also all liberals and love the gays, so you guys might not like that society, that world order.
That's right. I got no issue with the gays. Just, do your thing somewhere else, you know what I mean?
Just let me black out
also
in peace.
like
another country.
Might be willing to trans the kids.
No, the only issue I have with the trans is the kids, No kids.
Look, they're a very liberal, progressive society.
See, liberal's not the right word for that, though, you know what I mean?
Which?
Like, it's not liberal to cut off a kid's, hoo-hoo.
No, I would say that's progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said they were liberal, and I'm like, well,
Well, I value liberalism more than progressivism. I have sensitivities to certain progressive values, but
I don't even understand how like the trans stuff is progressivism. Is it like
progressivism
eugenics?
it's like a really loose label for essentially like pushing dominantly for areas where the high levels of minorities have been like disproportionately disaffected, basically.
I don't know. I like the progressives of the early 1900s were eugenicists. Is that the right word? Mm-hmm. They were into eugenics.
I don't know if I would agree that the progressives were. I would say that was more mainstream.
That was like their principal
thing. No, not the progressives. That was the mainstream. That was the mainstream.
No, those are the progressives.
Eugenics was mainstream more than it was progressive.
Eugenics was not a mainstream opinion. It was an opinion pushed by small elites. But the term progressive, it's had a wildly different meaning from a century ago than today. It used to be Woodrow Wilson was a progressive.
This is a fact, by the way.
Yeah, Thomas Sowell talks about it. Woodrow Wilson was super racist. He was also pro-centralized state and pro-eugenics. And what happened is the Marxists took over time, and with FDR, you saw a shifting of the term progressive, and the term liberal got co-opted by leftists under FDR as well.
Sure, it's just like this is such a boring, uninteresting talking point. It's like we're people of the past into bad things sometimes.
I find the entire left platform boring because it's inaccurate.
Oh, good one. Really got him with that one, right?
Yeah, I did.
Changing of definitions.
Good job. Autism bullying
yes,
at its finest. Right? So like if we want to engage with the actual ideas here, right? Like, okay, yeah, eugenics was popular, so was like phrenology, right? And these fell out of favor. Although a certain level of soft eugenics has almost been held universally even to this day, right? We just don't want to call it eugenics, right? Like most people are okay, for example, with like making sure that we try to reduce over time rare diseases that cause immense suffering, right? Like people are broadly okay with these ideas. And so obviously I'm not a supporter of eugenics, but I think like saying like it was just a left idea. It's like, okay, I could just say conservatives just always really love slavery and just love slavery. It's just like it's an unsophisticated, uninteresting way to engage with the ideas because it requires typifying an entire like half of political thought that has a massive amount of history that's unsatisfying. It would be the same as if I did that to the conservative side, which I typically aim not to do.
You would say a different thing in a different context. In a different context where you're talking about in a different context where you're talking about what traits do you want to further inside the population, because you accept these principles, and I'm not a big eugenics guy. I don't support it. I believe in a mating free market, but. So you're willing to accept the principles that are bad, like horrible illnesses, but what principles are positive? What are the positive genetic traits you'd select for?
There aren't positive genetic traits that I would like to select for.
Of course there are. There are traits that make people more successful. There are traits that make people more intelligent.
Yeah, but I don't want any level of state level pressure to be selecting for that. I think that would be bad.
You're willing to talk about it at the extremes, but you don't have a logically consistent code for what you're willing to accept.
Have you ever heard of the word pluralism?
But what does pluralism mean?
Pluralism means that you have irreducible moral values that often end up competing against one another. This is what most democracies are built on. For example, you've got like Hobbes and Locke that are talking about privacy versus freedom, right? Privacy matters and freedom matters. And the actual answer is in different circumstances, you might have to prioritize security, such as at the border, whereas we might prioritize freedom, such as people can't just come into your house without a warrant and take things or arrest you, right? So we like have these trade-offs all the time. This is what pluralism is. It's a very accepted standard thing.
Well, what's the line between that and just making things up based off context for what sounds good?
Well, typically you would utilize philosophy to build a rational reason as to why certain values might matter more here. This is what do you mean? Do you think Hobbes and Locke just didn't really engage in philosophy? They're just some silly billy guys who just like had preferences?
Hobbes and Locke would be radically right-wing by the current context.
That's not what I asked you. I'll ask you again.
Of history.
Do you think Hobbes and Locke were silly little guys that just couldn't draw a through line?
I'm asking about your moral philosophy.
I asked you about Hobbes and Locke. Can you not answer it? Were they silly little guys? It's a comparison. I'm making an analogy of your logic.
Hobbes was operating under a radical modern monarchist perspective, and Locke was operating under a liberal perspective. They both ground themselves in the Greco-Roman and the Western and the Abrahamic tradition.
Sure.
That's not the modern left. The modern left is not operating on a similar level of rationality as those thinkers.
Of course they are. Most of the modern left is broadly built of like Rawls and utilitarianism.
No, they're not. They just make shit up.
That's not true. And here's the issue, right? I can engage with conservatives and actually take their concept seriously. I think some of the things that you've said have been insightful and interesting and should be engaged with, and I've disagreed with some things. The problem is that what you're doing instead is, I think I even heard you before saying, I don't even talk to anybody on the left anymore. Plugging your ears and not engaging with opposition that actually has substantive ideas, especially if such a large population amount finds some of these ideas valuable, is just it's just intellectual naivety and baby behavior.
It's because we got to grab more chat.
I can engage with you in the way that you should engage with me and what I'm actually saying. Answer my question. Is Hobbes and Locke silly because they were engaging in a pluralistic question of what is the tension between these two irreducible values that they had?
The reason I reached that conclusion is because I've spent hundreds of hours or thousands of hours talking to leftists, and I've read thousands of pages in the history of the left.
But you don't know me.
And I came to the conclusion, I've seen your arguments so far, and I came to the conclusion...
Straw man half of my arguments.
And I came to the conclusion that the left is not rationally consistent, and they're not morally consistent, and so...
Agreed.
You're not going to
the
reach...
right is anti-war, but they love Trump. They're Christian values, but they have a sex pest in there.
Because the right
sure, I can do this to the right too. That's my point. Is that it's a straw man? Sure, I believe you. I believe you that you have talked to a bunch of really dumb.
But the right is a composition, a coalition of disaffected liberals, libertarians, and conservatives.
The left is a coalition of progressive and liberals. The left is a
because the left is not consistent. Moderates who are rational will driven out.
Neither is the right, because the right has to have a big tent.
No, you're talking about specific conservatives. I am saying there is when you refer to the right, you're talking about a coalition in modern times, which includes disaffected liberals, moderates, and libertarians.
True.
They left the left because the left was morally and logically inconsistent. I'll give you an example.
They left the left for tons of reasons.
Favorite
Actually,
example,
probably the number one reason why they left the left wasn't just logic inconsistency, it was abhorrent left behavior and censorship, right? The way that the left treated people.
I would argue a lot of weird beliefs, like what is a woman?
It's a performance. I've already answered this question before.
This is exactly the point.
No, this is the word game.
We know what a woman is.
What's a chair? What's a chair?
A chair is an object with 4 legs used for a human being to sit on.
Is a stool with 3 legs not a chair?
It is a chair indeed.
Oh, okay. But it didn't match your definition.
Well, because a stool is a subset of an object for which you can sit on.
Yeah, we're doing the categorical argument.
No, you're doing a performance that no one believes is real.
Hold on. I'm the only one just willing to engage in the actual philosophy of the question here, right? Rather than just doing some like silly conservative
No, I'm willing. I just don't want to interrupt.
No, the point is...
Ian's always willing, right?
Human beings use words to convey ideas. Sometimes we have a mismatch in the definition of words between cultures. Everybody understands what is meant when someone says what is a woman.
That's why I say a performance. If you said to me, what do you mean when you say a performance? I say, by and large, when we say a woman, we mostly mean a person that has tits, that looks like a woman, that typically dresses like a woman and acts like a woman, right? According to our society. Yes, it is.
No.
Absolutely.
No.
Yes, because you didn't check my genitalia. You didn't check my genitalia. You looked at my breasts. You look at the way that I'm femme presenting, that I have long hair and that I talk femininely. And I've talked about tampons and whatever else I've talked about. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You might be
I appreciate
a dude,
that.
but come on.
So,
Well, I agree. I agree.
it's-
This is the issue with
No
categories.
one uses the word to mean performance, and you know it, and you are lying to say otherwise.
I'm not because
you are.
I'm not because the gender movement just absolutely said, actually, let's separate woman from female. A female is a biological.
The only people who would
cis
make
woman.
the argument that the word woman means performance are progressive, hoity-toity individuals who pretend like they're smarter than other people.
This is the way language has always worked, right? Yes, it absolutely is. And language and definitions have absolutely shifted in utilization and what we mean them to use all the time. This is why depression can be a clinical term, and depression can also be a mood.
The moderates leave
I
because
agree.
you are logically
I agree.
inconsistent.
Well, it does something that's really interesting, which is that it creates basically a very simple thing. It causes a major question. It makes somebody look silly if they don't have an immediately satisfying answer. But what it also is doing is it's employing a categorical error and utilizing that to say, see how simple this is? And I would agree, yeah, 99% of the time that this is true.
5, we get it.
Sure, but the issue is that, again, we have these fringe instances where it doesn't fall into it, which is why we utilize other language to talk about things like gender.
That 2 plus 2 equals 5. 2 plus 2 equals 5.
No, I would say I disagree.
But
I disagree.
The mainstream left did, and they also could not define woman, despite the fact that everyone on the planet can. And then moderates were like, these people are nuts.
The core assumption of the left is
sort of.
The core assumption of the left is social constructionism, that you can use social categories to create reality, and that the people in power through using social categories can fundamentally alter reality. My core assumptions of reality, if you want to look at Aristotle or Plato, Aristotle said that material things exist, and that material things are reflections of higher things, but you should assess the material things first. Plato thought that the world we live in is a reflection of higher divine forms. Western civilization has used these two different theories based on context to assess for different layers of reality. And so the West has alternated between these two core theories, and these were the acceptable ones for how to structure reality.
We got to grab
what's
chats.
Money?
We got to grab.
What's money?
Money is typically a universal trade medium that represents debt for exchange between individuals for something of value.
Can we shift and change what money actually means, and have we?
How? What do you mean?
Well, in the past, for example, we utilized like loan sticks, and then we shifted to gold, for example.
Inflation.
And money has always just
Inflation
been
is not the answer to a
universal
categorical
intermediary of
conversation.
value exchange.
Sorry?
And money has always been the intermediary for value exchange.
Sure, but the way that we've observed and viewed money, the way that we've engaged with money, modern monetary theory
The fact that technology
blows
exists
apart.
does not change the fact that a woman is an adult human female.
Well, the issue is that when technology exists, we discover that a lot of fundamental axioms that we held about the world are more complex and fractal than we realized.
I'm just gonna say this again. You do recognize that like 95% of people on the planet disagree with what you're saying.
Absolutely, but the
Okay,
issue is,
well,
hold on,
more
at a
chats.
quantum level, for example, 99% of the population would disagree. If I say, if I'm not looking at the moon, if nobody observes it, does it exist? Everyone would say, yeah, of course it exists. But at a quantum level, no, it doesn't.
That's not
really.
true.
Yes, it is true.
Object permanence is defined by a baby at 1 year.
This is like the major quantum conversation that happened between Einstein and what's the guy who ended up being right?
You fundamentally misunderstand the double slit experiment. Can we read more super chats
This is
now?
not about the double slit experiment at all. I don't even know why you're
particle
bringing it
wave
up.
duality. They both
Heisenberg's
exist.
uncertainty
Thank you.
principle.
Yes, it is about particle wave duality.
Yes. Okay.
We'll change the definition of the term currency
Schrodinger's cat and all that
to
stuff. We get it.
electricity.
All right. Let's see what we got here. Timothy Robinson says, always good to see you, Rudyard. Rudyard Hist 102's Age of the Last Men was insightful. Could I impose on you for a book suggestion of Cold War history?
The best Cold War history is John Lewis Gaddis's one. I'm trying to think of any other ones. Dan Carlin's got a great podcast too.
Right on.
Listen to that.
Cody Allen says, what's your favorite Death Cab song, Tim? Tremendous question. I like the earlier albums. President of What is one of my favorites. I used to play it all the time on the guitar. TV Trace is pretty good. And then I would just say, like, the thing about all of their albums is every single song was good. Title and Registration has always been a big favorite of mine. I could play that one. And then, of course, Transatlanticism, Tiny Vessels, so good. And We Looked Like Giants. We Looked Like Giants may actually be my favorite. It's a tough call.
What about
I like Transatlanticism or the New Year, actually. The New Year, because when I was when that song came out, all of the hipster indie kids, like, we'd have a party on New Year's and everybody would play the New Year as soon as the New Year hit because we were so cool. But then I'll also give a shout out to Postal Service, because that was good too.
Who? I Will Follow You Into the Dark. Is that Death Cab?
Yes.
I love that song,
It's
man.
a gooder.
See, but that's when they got big. Like, you're talking about the OG stuff, bro.
You gotta be a hipster, man.
Someday you will die. That song's so good.
Don't get us
I'll be right behind.
But to be fair, like Soul Meets Body is okay. Crooked Teeth, I really do
Soul
like.
Meets Body is awesome.
I really just love, like, President of What? Ben Gibbard is a master lyricist. He knows how to do it. I haven't listened to Death Cab in a long time, though.
They had a new song come out the other day.
Oh, wow, good for them. All right, let's go. Minor Zircon says, this chick is a communist. I thought we figured that out yesterday when she wanted the government to steal people's property.
That never happened. Again, you can strawman me for as long as you want. The issue is that
I believe the caller.
I in large part come to Tim's show because I want to engage genuinely with people of opposing ideas. If you can't do the same to me, that's fine, but that's a reflection of you.
No, actually, we all agree with you, but before you got here, we all talked to each other and said, let's just pretend like we don't.
Yeah, they actually all told me, they're like,
setup.
we voted for Kamala. I'm not even gonna lie, we voted for Kamala.
Only when liberals show up, we change the format of the show.
Would you
think
have
it's
voted for
right-wing.
Kamala?
Huh?
Would you have voted for Kamala?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Man, I didn't like it because they selected her.
Not even probably. Absolutely, unequivocally, unquestionably.
The problem was they didn't have a primary, and it was like imperial selection. That's like, I don't want to vote for imperial selection.
Sure, but it's better than somebody who tried to overthrow the
I gotta read this.
So, no.
I prefer the process.
I hate Mark
prefer the Constitution.
Efferberg says, drug test your guests, Tim. Okay. Mythos says, Kami Mami, just to let you know, corporations are considered individuals under American law. If you let another country screw over our business interests, you are letting them screw over the majority.
So that's a good thing, actually. The law did it, so that's a good thing.
I just thought it was funny that he called you Kami Mami.
All of them are going to call me communist. I'm not a communist. In fact, I spend a large portion of my content pushing back against communists.
Pims the Great says, I live in rural Virginia. If a pregnant cow, a heifer, crosses onto my land, neither the cow or calf become mine, and I could be killed if I try to say they are. End birthright citizenship.
I want to take the cow.
Mythos says, Jesus is the third temple. His return is the fulfillment of the prophecies. He said before his death, tear this temple down and I will rebuild it in 3 days. He came back to life in 3 days. Interesting. All right. Let's see what we got going over here on this YouTube. Yeah. We got a bunch of big super chats here on this
thank you,
YouTube.
guys.
Big ones.
Big, very big.
Very
Some
big.
say too big, but it's okay.
The biggest, the best.
Madcap Vlog says, I got a question for Rudyard. Have you looked into astrology and the 84-year Uranus cycle? The last Neptune was in Aries. The last Neptune was in Aries was the Civil War. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was the American Revolution. Is it real?
So, I have not studied astrology. I have not put significant effort into it. I heard there were studies by the CIA studying it that thought that I heard the CIA did research that there are correlations in political events and astrology, but I haven't looked deeply into that.
We're talking about Newton and how he was into alchemy.
So
Is that...
Newton was into alchemy, and these things were all part of the same coherent pre-modern worldview, but I have not sunk a lot of time into astrology.
I feel like the planets, if it is a magnetic universe, which evidence is pointing at, that they're like lenses, radiation lenses, so that the radiation passes through planetary bodies, and it can super accelerate and leave imprints on your body when it comes out of the mom's EMF frequency body. You're exposed to the radiation, and it imprints something on you. Might have something to do with where their stars and planets are.
People generally believe that the planets informed stuff over history. What I would best guess is it's a correlation thing, that the planets operate under certain underlying correlations we're not aware of, and that these correlations operate across the universe. Because the suicide rate is correlated with the yo-yo purchasing rate, and no one thinks that buying yo-yos causes suicide.
I do now.
Have you ever seen the website Spurious Correlations?
Yeah, I have.
It's great, right?
Spurious Correlations.
I love this site's been around forever. It's so good. Here we go. Google searches. Let's see. The number of movies Dwayne Johnson appeared in correlates with Google searches for zombies. Popularity of the first name Caroline inversely correlates with Newmont's stock price.
Interesting.
Google searches for zombies correlates with the number of real estate agents in North Dakota. Interesting. The distance between Neptune and Mercury correlates with petroleum consumption in Azerbaijan.
Whoa,
that proves
that's
it.
something.
And it's from 92 to 2017 too.
Right.
All these different timelines, interesting. I wonder why they can't hold to a consistent timeline for their claims.
Look at this. The popularity of the press F to pay respects meme correlates with Boeing's stock price.
Naturally.
I wonder what happened before 2006.
Probably the same thing.
Or before 2011 or before 2004, 1999. Interesting.
Obviously,
I love
exactly
graphs
what you think
when you
it
just take a little snapshot of them.
Yeah, I love
Now,
that.
see, this is interesting.
graphs.
The number of breweries in the
Fuck
U.S.
yeah.
correlates with Amazon stock price. That is not a spurious correlation. That is not at all a spurious correlation.
Because they bought Whole Foods and they put breweries in the Whole
because
Foods.
Amazon stocks themselves are sentient and they buy beer.
No,
They sell beer,
because
rather.
Amazon's growth correlates directly with the shuttering of box stores and local businesses, which creates open, vacant buildings by which people try to fill them with a service that Amazon does not provide. So your local butcher gets shut down, your local packaging store gets shut down, whatever Amazon.com can replace. There are now empty buildings in your city center, and what can't Amazon make? A brewery to hang out, play games, and drink. So this actually makes sense.
Interesting. They do have sell beer, like in the Whole Foods in Venice, California, on Rose and 7th. We would go hang out at the bar in the Whole Foods.
Let's grab this one from the Apostle. James says, I'm a combat veteran, 22 years in the USMC infantry, 6 combat deployments. I can tell that Kyla has never experienced real adversity, let alone seconds to assess potential life and death danger.
Okay, just to front load
That's
this
true
from the
though,
hop.
right?
No, I was serially sexually abused from 0 to 3.
I'm sorry.
I worked for, it's fine, it's nobody's fault. One of the worst things that I think that we do on all of these types of political conversations is we engage in thought termination, right? We use cliches that will make our audiences happy, like being like, what is a woman? It's like, okay, I can just scream, Trump's a pedophile, and my audiences will be happy too. I think one of the worst things that we also do is we assume a lot about each other, right? You've assumed, for example, that there's no substance that you can engage with me on, which is unfortunate because I haven't assumed that about you, just by the fact that like I haven't been overly impressed by a number of the things that you've said.
You've never been in a life and death situation, right?
Yes, I have. I've had children chase me with axes. I worked for high-risk youth. I spent most of my career in jails working with like both young sex offenders and their victims.
But they're getting chased by dudes with axes, yes.
I'm not a combat veteran, and I would never ever begin to take that away from those people or steal that valor. But people,
have you ever been shot at?
People pretending, no, I haven't, but I'm Canadian. We don't have guns. That's crazy, right? Well, we have the next best thing, which is children with axes. Close, actually. Very close. And I've shotguns.
Someone said after our hockey team beat the Canadians, they have to give each person in America 40 acres and a moose. I agree.
Yeah, but you get only the Northern Territory, so nobody cares.
In Rudyard's defense, he did ask you what your philosophy, when you guys were going at it, he asked you what your philosophy was, but it kind of got ignored.
Sure. The reason why I'm saying that he's not engaging with me is he just keeps insisting you're morally inconsistent, and it's like I'm a pluralist. So being pluralistic, like it doesn't mean that I can't be inconsistent. But you can just ask me, how do you draw the through line of your foreign policy, and I'll give it to you. But instead, you assume things about my foreign policy.
I think the point you can understand is that like Prince.
I'm going to say this. So the reason I say this is that I've spent a very significant amount of time studying the philosophy of the left. And the left uses various rhetorical games, and when I hear them, I just throw them out. Because the you've used many. So when I hear the rhetorical games, I hear the mental filtering process they're used for.
But what is a woman isn't a rhetorical game? What are we talking about here?
I'm not done. So
okay, I'll ask you afterwards.
When you look at how the left operates, they have a series of mental games they use, and they have a series of filtering mechanisms.
Why don't we start off the uncensored show with this? So just keep that thought, because we're going to jump into the uncensored portion.
Also, Comey Mommy based. I'm taking it.
Rumble.com, Comey Mommy. Rumble.com/Timcast IRL in about 30 seconds, and then we'll add swear words to the arguments. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Rudyard, do you want to shout anything out?
You can watch my shows. I'm just here, man.
Just floating through the universe, man.
So I should start now?
No. Now we're going to shout out and then we're going to switch
yet.
over. So Kyla, what's up?
Yeah, hey, not so erudite. If you actually want to engage in substance, that's kind of the thing that I do. I don't care what you think.
Give me a look.
I care how you think.
No.
Yes, it's not about what, it's about how. We are bridging the gap. Literally, the future is reliant on people continuing to communicate in high stress situations like this. So keep it going.
Ian's a dogged subscriber. You can't trust anything he says about
all
me, okay?
I want is to preserve righteousness throughout, but we got to define all those terms. I'm at Ian Crossland. Follow me there. Carter Banks.
Man, this has been a really great discussion. Thank you both for coming out, and I'm really excited for the after show. You can follow me at Carter Banks everywhere. Phil.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. You can check out my Patreon. That is patreon.com/Phil That Remains. The band is All That Remains. We're going on tour this spring. We're going to be out with Born of Osiris and Dead Eyes. We start April 29th in Albany. You can check out You can get tickets at allthatremainsonline.com. You can check out the band's music at Apple Music, Amazon Music, Pandora, YouTube, Spotify, and Deezer. Don't forget the The left lane is for crime.
We will see you all over at rumble.com/TimcastIRL in about 30 seconds. Thanks for hanging out.